After 13 years clean and 8 years of marriage, I did heroin 3 weeks ago and almost came close to fully relapsing. I was a heroin addict in the Lower East Side of Manhattan in the 1990s. As a teen, I got clean at 21 years old after years of abuse. I got married at 26 to my amazing and beautiful wife. She knows I was an addict. I spent all these years not even really thinking that much about the concept of relapsing. It had been so long. I still thought about it, but with marriage and my kids and everything, the thought of it was just so ridiculously out of sight to even consider trying it again. 3 weeks ago, it was my friend's birthday. He is 4 years younger than me, so of course he wants to go to some cool, hip, sketchy bar club thing in Bushwick. I got drunk. Really drunk. I hadn't really drank much at all in the past few years, so my tolerance was way lower than expected. There was a dealer outside and a few other junkies nearby. I don't even fully remember what happened. I just remember going with them, abandoning my friend at the bar. It was like 1 a.m. anyways, and going to some apartment and shooting up. I spent the night there, then all the way until noon the next day. I had 10 missed calls. I panicked when I came out of my daze. I told my wife I'd gotten way too drunk and was puking and my phone was out of battery, so I stayed at Charlie's house. She was disappointed I didn't tell her, but also thought it was funny because she used to tease me for not being able to handle my liquor. This was a "I told you so" moment. She had told me not to drink too much before I went to the bar. She wasn't even in New York. She was at a summer house with the kids in Massachusetts. I spent the next 4 days until they got back just riddled with anxiety, urges to get more heroin, horrific mind zaps. I don't even know what to call them. It was, in some ways, worse than my withdrawal symptoms when I first was an addict. Not because of the physical feeling, but the horrible mental feeling of what I was possibly giving up. My wife and kids. I wanted to fucking get more so badly. I left my house to find heroin 4 fucking times. 4 times I gave up to get more, but wasn't able to find any, and snapped back to reality and went back home. I still thank fucking God I did not somehow run into some street dealer during those 4 times. I would have absolutely done it. I feel like everything I thought about myself, that I was strong, that my addiction was behind me, that I had beat heroin, it was all gone. I am not going to say I am back at square one or anything. I am not, but I feel like something inside of me has reset. My unwavering strength against addiction was broken at the slightest temptation. I still am weak. Heroin is so much stronger than me. It's truly unbelievable how much stronger it is than me. When I was young, my aunt had cancer. She beat it. Then it came back soon after, and she beat it again. It didn't come back. And we loved how strong she was for fighting her cancer and that she had overcome it. She lived with us. I remember her feeling of strength after her 2nd year of not having cancer, her 3rd year, her T-year. It finally felt like it was gone for good. Her thinking, it's finally behind me now. It's a part of my past. And then it just fucking came back. 9 years after her first diagnosis, it came back and killed her. I remember her feelings and how she felt about it. So many years after she thought it had gone away. That is how I feel. Like a cancer, which I thought I got rid of a decade ago, just showed back up on my screening. The first 5 to 6 days after I tried it that time outside the bar were the worst. My kids and wife have come back. The urges mostly went away the second I saw my kids. I hugged them so damn hard. And I never told my family what happened, nor will I ever. My wife never understood that side of me. She met me 5 whole years after I was clean. I just cannot have her know, ever. I won't do it again. I am planning on not drinking to excess like that again, except maybe in very specific situations, like at the summer house, where there is no option of drugs. I mean, not like I want to get drunk again like that, but just in case I ever want to get loose. I am never doing that in the city again. I am still about 90% sure that I won't ever touch heroin again. I am still positive in myself about it. It's just, it used to be 99% sure. That is what fucking terrifies me. I said, heroin is stronger than me. It is absolutely stronger than me. But the reason I won't ever do it again is that it isn't stronger than my family, my wife, and kids. I don't care about how good it feels. I will not subject my wife and children to me being an addict. I would rather just kill myself than that. That was one kind of confession. What do you think? Leave a comment and we go on to listen what ReadIT thinks. Not a this girl. No kidding. While I think it's admirable that Op is committed to tackling his addiction, I cannot believe that everyone is just glossing this shit over. He went to a junkie hangout with junkies and shot up, and he's hiding it from his wife. If they have unprotected sex, he's putting her at a huge risk. A good friend of mine got Hep C while he was living in New York and addicted to heroin. It's not fun. Slangwich. Yeah, I also can't believe he thinks he's going to manage his addiction without being honest about relapsing to his wife. He's not telling her because he's sliding back into old behavior, and hiding it from loved ones is how addicted people keep that door to drugs open. He's going to need to be honest with her if he hopes to keep up his sobriety. Deleted user, I thought I was the only one thinking it. This is like having an affair with an ex-wife, and he just wants to brush it under the rug and pat himself on the back for it. What the fuck? His wife deserves to know what her husband is capable of and what he's done. She deserves to know the risks to herself and her children. He's 90% sure he won't do it again. I don't like the sound of a 90% chance that my spouse won't leave the kids home alone to go score more drugs. Pascal, as a recovering alcoholic, I offer this advice. You never beat your addiction. It never magically goes away. You just rack up more time between the last time you did it and today. Make recovery part of your day, every day. I'm not saying you have to go to a meeting every day, but you do have to work on your recovery every single day, Bitterzine. I agree, get some support. Someone who can hold you accountable when you feel weak. Go to meetings, see a counselor, whatever works. I always got so sick from heroin that I didn't really get too hooked on it in the first place. I got lucky. My cousin Kevin didn't. He died 9 months ago. And my cousin Michael overdosed this week. He didn't make it. My aunt overdosed 2 years ago. She didn't make it either. This has left everyone so broken and sad. It's not worth it. Stick around. Be there for your family. They love you. It's worth it to stick around. Deleted user, I'm being 100% serious here when I say you need to quit drinking. It's a trigger for you, and likely will be even more of one in the future, since you will probably always mentally link alcohol use what the hell relapsing. And honestly, the fact that you're so reluctant to give it up even after what has happened. Already outlining scenarios where and how you'll drink again suggests to me that alcohol may already be a little too important to you. You're an addict. People get addicted to alcohol with great frequency. It's very easy to do. To beat this relapse, you need control over yourself, something alcohol does not afford. Nagazgura. Also, purely selfishly, if he really does care about having a good relationship with his wife, his relationship will suffer and very likely come crashing down by keeping huge secrets like this. The longer you don't tell her, the more the guilt will eat away at you. And when she inevitably does figure it out, either through you telling her or you relapsing or just realizing you're acting different, you will have not only disappointed her but also betrayed her by lying and keeping this from her. If you tell her now and express the same regret that you expressed here, she will primarily want to help you. You suffer from a disease, and she'll want to fight it with you, even if she doesn't completely understand what addiction means. But if you choose to lie and hide it from her, I really wouldn't blame her if she ends up leaving you for that kind of lack of trust. Secondly, you need to tell your wife. She can help you. Your chances of recovery are higher if you can feel comfortable seeking the help you need. You need to have someone to hold you accountable. Already your addict brain thinks you got away with it. Your lies to your wife and yourself are very obvious to everyone reading this post. This isn't a judgment on you as a person at all. It is a symptom of the disease. Also, she deserves to know she is an equal partner in your relationship. Keeping this from her is denying her her autonomy. You're afraid of losing her? That's understandable, and I completely sympathize. But she needs to make the decision herself. You can't make it for her. She deserves to be able to choose. She needs to know for her sexual health as well. If you are going to have sex with her, you can't hide the fact that you're a relapsed addict. That's dangerous to her health. Clarity by hilarity. Please do go get tested before you sleep with your wife. You don't know for certain where that needle came from, and you would never want to hurt her this way. Good that you resisted urges since then. You may want to share this with her. Relapse can happen even years later, but stay strong and don't allow yourself to be in any environments like that again, as alcohol lowers inhibitions significantly. Stay strong. Look at those babies anytime it crosses your mind. Monkey Sanda football. People who've never had addictions don't understand addictions. With that said, I would tell my wife. Her help with future temptations might mean the difference between full-on relapse or being able to fight it. The urge never goes away, you just learn to live with it and break the habits that lead to it. I myself had a coke problem. I quit, but anytime I drank, I didn't have the will to fight it. Now, if there's drugs around, I don't drink. Or if I'm drinking and drugs become available, I leave. It's kind of like having someone to help you say no. And yeah, cancer is a bitch. Sorry for your loss. My previous wife fought it for 7 years, beat it twice. Third time, she lost. I feel your pain on that one. Mutniks, I really appreciate this confession and relate to it strongly. I am an ex-heroin addict as well, although I've only been clean about 10 months. I live with my wife, who was also an addict. We got clean together, and just yesterday, I took my car to get it inspected and ran into an old friend who is still an addict. Very shortly after meeting, he told me he has brown and clear for sale. I instantly replied, I'm good, but for the rest of the day, it was in the back of my head, just knowing how easy it would be to go get high. The only thing that kept me from ever acting on any urges was the fact that I kept thinking about my wife, my father, and everyone else in my family who has helped me through this struggle. Knowing how much I would let them all down was what really kept me in check. I couldn't imagine what would happen if I was drunk, though. Needs vodka every day. Spoken from someone with multiple family members that are addicts, both current and recovering. Tell someone soon. Actually, get a sponsor. They have plenty of experience, and the next time your wife takes the kids to Massachusetts, you have assistance. Check in with your sponsor often. Respond to your sponsor as soon as they contact you. Every time. Secondly, your wife needs to know. She is the closest to you and sees you the most. If she is counseled to identify the behaviors of an addict that is close to relapsing or has relapsed, then you have help sooner. Lastly, seek counseling. You formulate your own strength. If you believe you aren't strong enough, you won't be. If you believe you can overcome this, you will. By your post, there is doubt. That increases the likelihood that you'll relapse. The sooner you get counseling, the sooner you can bump that 90% to 100%. Carry pictures of your family with you. Keep them pinned in your car dashboard and at work where they are always watching you. That appears to be your driving force. So make sure you are always aware of them. You've got this. Mescalian. Yeah, the monkey never leaves, man. Went a whole vacation with an ex of mine lit, faking piss breaks to dose in the bathroom. She never knew until I confessed a year later. That damn monkey never leaves. I've also accepted I like to get fucked up. It's who I am. Adventurous, curious spirit. So I stick to non-addictive. Got my medical card, which keeps the mind monkeys in bay, better than Blackie-chan, and increases my appetite, which helps fitness goals. I recommend exercise to any addict and shrooms when I'm feeling a little squirrely. The shrooms cacti too. I have to give credit to for helping me come to the realization I wasn't as functioning as an addict as I thought. Refuse to touch alcohol. Shit for the body and mind. I see the drinking as the catalyst for relapse here. It's a known inebriant, lowers inhibitions. Have had nights of drinking in the past where I did drugs I never thought I'd try. Horrible drug for the curious mind, pal. Well, fuck alcohol as much as H. You ever want to backhand that monkey a little? Look into Iboga. Ron Swanson Soldman. I didn't read your sad-ass story, but you sound like the typical drug abuser. You care about nobody but yourself and then want sympathy or for people to act like you're some sort of hero. Be a man. Totally. Maybe you shouldn't have done fucking heroin? Deleted user, don't compare your addiction to heroin to cancer. People never wanted cancer and got it. You chose to take heroin. Dajuga no. Sorry, but I have no sympathy. Anyone who takes heroin with the widespread knowledge of the problems it causes deserves whatever happens. Cure the opioid addiction problem by not wasting Narcan on ODS. I know it's not a popular, but why keep reviving these people when they just rush out and do it again? The problem will take care of itself. I slept with my daughter's ex-boyfriend. He got me pregnant, and I had an abortion. They got back together and got married. Remorse, this was back in, let me think, maybe 1997. I was 38 and my daughter was 18, and she was dating Harry, who was 24. I was an alcoholic and dabbled in other drugs, mostly cocaine. I was not a good person, let alone mother. Not like I was abusive to my daughter or anything, but I was generally inattentive and cared more about my alcohol and drugs than her, especially in her teen years. I am 14 years sober now. I disapproved of my daughter dating Harry, but I never told her why. He would flirt with me constantly. And the age difference also creeped me out. Also, he was an alcoholic and drug user, just like me. She broke up with him over his alcoholism soon after she moved away. Not too far, but regardless, she didn't live with me anymore. Harry kept calling me and asking if we wanted to get drinks. I turned him down. But then, one day he said he had a bunch of coke, and I couldn't resist. He came over, we did the coke, and we ended up having sex. He was a very good-looking guy. He looked a lot like that ridiculous 80s Justin Bieber picture that was on the front page today. That is actually what made me think about him. For the next few months, maybe like 3 to 4 months, he would sometimes come over and we would have sex and do drugs and get drunk together. Any drug addict knows what that is like to have a drug addict buddy in that way. Then I got pregnant. I knew it was by him. I had sex without a condom a few times stupidly. I never told him I was pregnant, and I went and got the abortion and kept it a secret. Anyways, I stopped seeing him after that. It was too weird. I also got sober for like 4 months before relapsing. Fast forward 2 years and my daughter contacts me and tells me that she got back with Harry and that he is fully sober. I was mortified, honestly. He was going to tell her that we slept together and she is going to hate me for life. They came over one day and said hi. And when my daughter was gone, Harry told me that there is no reason to tell her about what happened. I agreed. It's been 16 years of marriage on their part. They have a kid together. Harry got cancer, then beat it. I got sober. That's basically it. I don't see them very often. They live in Texas and I live on the East Coast. But whenever I do, there is always that tension between me and Harry. It's literally the first thing that comes to either of our minds. I can just tell. Not like sexual tension, like, why did we have to do that? What the fuck is wrong with us? Kind of tension. I think about this often, especially when I see my grandson. I always think that could have been my son if things had gone differently. But wow, that was one hell of confession. Let's hear what Redditors have to say. User, that annoying rich kid. Firstly, what the fuck? Secondly, what the fuck? Thirdly, this is why I'm on this subreddit. User, violator, and this is the reason I come here. God damn, user firepower. These people could be almost anyone you see. On the street that you don't know. Anyone could be walking around with this kind of history. You see some basic dad with his kids and wife and her mom doing some touristy stuff. But inside that guy's head is the memory of doing tons of drugs and fucking his mother-in-law. Inside the mother-in-law's head is the pregnancy and abortion. Fascinating. User Bovini Queefeeder. Now this is a confession. I'm so sick of the confessions about sneaking cookies in the closet or farting on my girlfriend's back when she sleeps. Fucking your kid's partner and getting their abortion. Wow. User Pelagian Empiricist. The best part was, I was grossed out by their 6-year age difference even though I banged him despite being 14 years. His senior, and also the mother of his girlfriend. Op still has some honest talks left to have with herself, in my opinion. User Dump Account Bulls. This is the shit that has me unable to trust a single soul. 16 years of marriage and he hasn't told her. She's living in a sham, happy or not, it's fake, and that's my biggest freaking fear. Edit fuck. It would ruin her life to tell her now. Her life is a fucking lie. She could have a chance to actually be with someone who won't lie and hide shit. Divorce isn't the end of the world, but life's too short to live in some fucking fantasy land. If her daughter would rather live in fantasy land, then I'm sure she will find a way to ignore it, since she's obviously been through mental abuse for a long fucking time. User Peacher Perfect. I feel bad for your daughter, honestly. I know what she isn't aware of can't hurt her, but the very possibility that this truth can get her to be devastated to a point of severe depression is what's bothering me, especially now that it's been so many years and they have a child together. It's easy for me to say, but if I were you, I'd have probably confessed to her about my time with her boyfriend right when she'd tell me about her patch-up. As a parent, you could have tried to ditch your fear of judgment from her or the fear of acquiring her hatred, and instead given her the opportunity to make a choice and choose a relationship where she wouldn't be living oblivious to dirty secrets all her life. User Andy, when you see them, try to live in the moment and not concentrate on the past. It's behind you. When living the life of partying, we all did things we regret, really regretful things, but we have to accept that was all part of the addiction or lifestyle. Hold our heads up and move on. Congrats on your sobriety. You're Charlie 2 Brown. Why is everyone just okay with her not telling her daughter? You let her marry a straight dirtbag. This dude propositions his ex-girlfriend's mom after a breakup and eventually had sex with her. SMH. Whatever, I guess. Hopefully there's no secrets like this with me involved. LOL, FML. Great confession though. LOL. I love this sub. Deleted user. I'm an inattentive, alcoholic, drug-using parent that fucked my daughter's ex. But I wasn't really abusive or anything. Really? What do you think abuse is? Because neglect is a thing. Edit, stop congratulating this woman. She made the goddamn choice to have unprotected sex with a much younger man who she disapproved of, who is absolutely a scumbag. He's an alcoholic drug user that seduced his girlfriend's mom using cocaine. What more evidence do you need? And you let your daughter marry that type of man. All because I didn't want her to hate me. Selfishness to the extreme. User Ganondorf. If drugs and alcohol are good reasons why parents can fuck with their children's life partner, then they should be banned. A bad decision is a bad decision. People here are making excuses and giving others a reason to consider similar actions because it's the lifestyle and addiction, so it's okay, and down the road it won't be a big deal. A few petty fucks, am I right? Deleted user, you're fucking disgusting. Your daughter deserves better than you and her scummy husband. But thank fuck you had an abortion, so you only have to be a shite mother to one child. How much do we get to blame on the drugs? If she had ran over someone and did a hit and run because she was high, would you chalk it up to blame the drugs and take no personal responsibility for you being a shit-tier mom? If she needs absolution, she can find a priest. Clearly, there are more character flaws here than just a drug habit. User Shagdocious. Your daughter would be completely destroyed if she ever found out really fucked up thing to do. You should just get out of her life. Eventually, it will come up and destroy her new family. And marriage, yeah, drugs make you do stupid shit, but it's not the drug's fault, it's your fault for doing it. User Lele Gerbears. You need to be honest with her. If this ever comes out, you will ruin her life. She will lose her husband, who she has a kid with, and her mother. The two people she is supposed to be able to trust most are blatantly keeping a secret from her. You are essentially lying to her and setting her and your grandkid up for unfathomable emotional turmoil. You said you weren't abusive, yet this is extremely abusive. I'm so glad I can say I'm not related to someone who still, although sober, only has their own self-interests in mind. Your daughter deserves the truth, and you both deserve the consequences. What's the most surprising thing you've ever uncovered about someone you're close to? Lexi Leontine, I was close to. My brother is a bit of a black sheep. I'm the rainbow sheep, and Mom hates fighting, so while the other brothers hated him, I was more lenient. I didn't mind him. He and I got on pretty well. He did some ST stuff, but I won't get into it. Let's just say, I understand why everyone has so much hate for him. Anyway, he and I are on decent terms. He's hurt me, but Mom's not well, so I tolerated him more than I probably should have, so she would have less stress. That's fine. I didn't mind. Then he came over, expressing his want to give a gift to our eldest to make amends or something. Kinda nice. Not sure if it was just things he was chucking out, or he honestly wanted to, I don't know. While here, he started jabbing at me. Twisting a metaphorical knife, if you will. I have been unwell for 3 years. It's gotten pretty bad. I was depressed to the lowest point before that last step quite a few times, and still have an extremely low quality of life and outlook. But I'm persisting. Mom and Dad help a lot. Quick list: extreme anxiety, persistent depressive disorder, illness anxiety disorder, eating disorder, severe OCD, problems with germs, can't leave the house, can't touch people, can't touch anything really. Yeah, need a new doctor. Anyway, he decided I wasn't sick. I was faking it. I was crazy and needed to go to the psych ward. That there was nothing wrong, that if he were in charge of me, he'd get me out of it. That he doesn't give a C about my feelings, and he's just being honest. That if Mom and Dad die, then he's the only one that could take me and would put up with me. That he was the hard done by one for his post-shoulder surgery. I will say he was constantly out of pain meds, taking too many, trying to guilt trip Mom into hers, drinking heavily. I don't know if his pain was really that bad, or if he made it worse by misusing the prescribed drugs, but I don't know. I asked why he was trying to mend a bridge between himself and his elder brother, while simultaneously burning the bridge between himself and the only sibling left that liked him. He didn't really care. There was a fight. He called Mom a few days later and basically had one of those "my whole life is shit and everyone hates me" calls where he wanted Mom to organize an intervention of sorts in reverse. He wanted her to gather us all together so he could ask us why we hated him so much. When Mom tried to explain some of the things he's done over the years to turn everyone against him, he argued and refused to acknowledge it in complete denial. Safe to say, no meeting was held. We have barely spoke. He needed help with scanning, and I helped simply to make sure he left ASAP. He also found me down the street on one of my first times out of the house in 3 years. He thought that was a perfect time to hug me. Remember, I can't touch anyone, even Mom, which kills me. Well, I said no, and he ignored me and still touched me, saying, "It's fine, I am clean, I showered." Breakdown initiated right there in the street. Managed to get home and chill. Haven't spoken or seen him since. Thing is, I knew he was a compulsive liar. I knew he had unhealthy obsessions like cheating, then stalking his own GF when she dumps him. I knew he said terrible things to each of my family members, but it was never outright at me, besides trying to pick up my girlfriends and friends. Hitting on my friends and lying and wrecking my car without compensation. Now he's done this. I just can't see him the same. I just can't see my brother anymore. He's like one of those people you kind of know from some obscure school you can't remember attending, but he seems to think you were best friends and all you can think is, please, go away. I guess it's going to be a while, if ever, until our family feel full again. Deleted user. I was talking to this van life guy online for years. Just talk about daily life stuff. After all those years, I thought I'd finally go meet him. Turns out he killed an old man in his trailer. The old man had been letting him stay there, and one night he just murdered him. His lawyer got him an insanity plea, and he lived in a psychiatric hospital for a few years. This was all before we started talking online. I guess he took meds and the doctors thought it was safe to let him out. So, after he got out, he started van life living. I couldn't meet him. He killed a guy, and now he lives in a van? We had been speaking for years and getting to know each other. But no, my crazy black cat. A few years after losing contact with a former friend, not close, but we used to meet up often as he was in our group for years, he was arrested for repeatedly assaulting his girlfriend's 5-year-old at the time of arrest daughter and filming it. A friend of mine still was close friends with him when he got arrested. Not anymore as soon as she knew. The assault must have taken place while I still regularly met him. Nobody would have assumed he had something like that in him. Outrageous. Many years ago, I went to a large gathering of my extended family to celebrate the engagement of my older cousin, mid-20s at the time, to his girlfriend, early 20s at the time. It was the first I had heard of them getting engaged. She had been going to college in the town I grew up in, and she had babysat me several Friday nights while my parents went out. She was the all-American girl next door. Nice to everyone, positive personality, bubbly blonde. Everyone liked her. A couple of years later, I asked my older brother if he remembered that gathering and if my cousin was still going to marry her. My brother proceeds to tell me that my cousin would not be getting married because around 6 months after that celebration, my cousin's fiancée admitted to him that she had been having an affair with a man in his 40s for around 18 months and that he was finally getting a divorce from his wife so that he could marry her. That sent my cousin off the deep end. Drug and alcohol abuse, job loss, criminal acts. He overdosed on painkillers around 10 years later. Fuck you, Pam. You ruined my cousin, Ted Stickson. Not going into much detail, but I found out someone I know evidently has mob ties and may or may not have knowledge about really shady stuff that happened decades and decades ago. They weren't directly involved in anything, but they were in the know about certain things because of who they were friends with. They also saw some shit and heard some stories. Pretty wild stories too, including something about people being fed to animals for murder and/or body disposal purposes. Not sure if they were like exotic pets or zoo animals. That bit might very well be a tall tale though. The rest of it I don't doubt, just given how well I know this person and what they're like. Pesri Star. Growing up, my uncle was the happiest, most go-lucky man on earth. Always a smile, always a joke. Had no idea until I was grown that he'd actually been drafted to Vietnam and came back extremely fucked up mentally. Lost himself to alcohol, to the point he was waking up every morning not knowing how he'd gotten wherever he found himself, until one morning he wakes up in jail for rape. No memory of what happened, no defense to offer. He's found guilty. He was 3 years into his sentence before his accuser admitted she'd made it up and he was released. He came out of that and decided to the happiest, most positive person he could, and spent the rest of his career working on a hotline as a suicide counselor. Forgettable username. A guy I used to work with got arrested as a result of a cold case investigation into the murder of his wife 25 years earlier. They had DNA evidence and were going to try him for murder, but the DA made an error and it didn't go to trial. Manic Maker Studios. I had a roommate a long time ago who was kind of like that. She was pretty, fit, intelligent, and from a wealthy family, but the old birth control failed one time and she got pregnant, and the dad was someone she kept around because he was a good lay but not someone she really liked. Her family basically turned their back on her. We're not paying for your mistakes. She moved out and got an apartment. Had to live on income assistance because she obviously couldn't work. And then she came around for a visit after her baby was born. Cute baby. But she was talking about how she was having such a hard time because her bathtub in her apartment was pink and it had chips in the enamel, and she kept bugging the landlord to refinish her tub. If you don't know what's involved in refinishing an enameled bathtub, it's harsh chemicals to strip the finish, and then equally harsh chemicals in the new finish. Thousands of dollars. And she doesn't realize that in the real world, if you don't like the color of the bathtub, you live with it, pay out of pocket to change it, or move. Never saw her again after that day. Bizarre turnaround though. Of all the roommates I had in that house, she was the last person I saw getting into that kind of mess. ATF for refusing to attend family events on my wife's side unless she stands up for herself. My wife, 35, and I, 36, have been married for 4 years and have 2 kids, 3 and 1. My wife's parents divorced when she was a teenager, and both her mom and dad have since remarried. There is a lot of competition between her mom, dad, and stepmom in terms of F.A. Miley time. Everything has to be equal. Meaning if we spend an afternoon with her mom, then we have to do the same thing with her dad and stepmom. Mom and stepmom especially put a lot of pressure on my wife and guilt trip her about it. My wife has a lot of trouble standing up for herself and saying no. Before we had kids, this wasn't as big of a deal. If we had to attend Tumanis 3 different Thanksgivings or Xmas gatherings, not a huge deal. I mean, it sucked, but it wasn't the end of the world. Now though, with 2 young kids, it's exhausting and I absolutely hate it. My wife and I have had numerous talks about her setting boundaries about this because I am at the end of my rope with it. The bickering and pressure is constant, and the need to keep everything equal essentially determines our entire non-work schedule. We had to attend 2 separate Easter events this spring. We're not even religious, because we went to one with her mom, so we had to do one with her dad and stepmom. After that, I told my wife I was done with this BS. I told her that she needs to stand up to her parents and start setting boundaries and saying no. I told her I won't allow her parents to continue to dictate how we live our lives. I told her if she is incapable of doing this, then I will absolutely step in and tell them off. But she begged me not to do that because she doesn't want to ruffle feathers and promised she would do better. Of course, that didn't happen. We ended up having to run around to 3 separate places on Memorial Weekend because of this same stuff. After we got home from the last stop, I told my wife I am done with this and will now pick and choose which things I want to go to. I won't stop her from going, and I will stay home with one or both kids if she doesn't want to take them, but I'm done. Lo and behold, this past weekend she was talking to her mom and 4th of July came up. My Phil had already invited us to his house for a pool day, and my wife told her mom about it. So of course we have to do something with them that weekend as well. When my wife told me about this, I told her that I will not be attending both, and I will choose if I want to attend either. My wife must have vented to her mom about this, because a couple days later I got a call from my wife's stepdad, the only sane person in this really. He told me that he completely agrees with me and that he's talked with his wife numerous times about not pressuring my wife, but she doesn't listen either. He suggested that whenever his wife pressures my wife into keeping things equal, that he and I go golfing together instead. When I told my wife about this idea, she called me a jerk and told me I'm being unsupportive. User, discount Mithril NTA, but you two need to work on this to find a solution. Personally, the solution should be along the lines of telling everyone with 2 young kids it is just not possible to keep running around to different households for events and holidays. We are finding we don't have time to establish our own traditions with the children because we are trying to keep the peace between you two. With this in mind, we will be alternating holidays and choosing to skip some that we will want to keep to ourselves. Should we host, invitations will be extended to everyone, and we expect a civil gathering. If you don't feel you can contribute to that environment for the sake of the kids, then please reply no. Thank you for understanding. Your wife calling you unsupportive just reads as she needs someone to stand up for her because she doesn't want to do it for herself. Have a talk with your wife about how exhausting this is for you. Focus on wanting to spend more quiet time with her and the kids, instead of not wanting to do things with her family. Something you don't mention is your family. When do you spend time with them if you are divvying up holidays between two gatherings already for just her family? Original poster. Something you don't mention is your family. When do you spend time with them if you are divvying up holidays between two gatherings already for just her family? I didn't include it in the post because of character limits, but this is a big issue for me too. Time spent with my side of the family is drastically smaller than the amount we spend with her side. Thankfully, my parents are not insane and feel bad for my wife's situation. But I do miss spending extended time with them over holidays, rather than rushing from place to place to see everybody. User. Discount mithril. This should be another thing you bring up with her when you talk to her. Let her know while your family has been understanding about this, she has been rushing you all around for the sake of fairness, in consideration to her family's needs, but has been so overwhelmed and flustered, your family has been getting the short end of the stick. If she truly wanted fairness, she would be considering their wants as well. I really empathize with you here. Both my husband and mine's parents are divorced, so holidays can be a mess. We finally set the boundary of, you got Christmas, Thanksgiving, etc. last year, so this year we are doing it with insert family. We got some guilt-trippy responses at first, but we stuck to our guns on this one, and it's been pretty smooth for the last 6 years or so. User, Noabies only here is your wife. And no, I don't buy she just wants to keep the peace and feels guilted into anything. She DGF about keeping the peace in her own marriage or where your family is concerned. She prioritizes her peace with her family and uses excuses to not stand up for your family unit. When you dare stick up for your peace, all of a sudden she has backbone to stand up to you and call you names. Her meek demeanor only comes into play when dealing with her family. How convenient. Time to either go to marriage counseling and hash this out or just file for divorce if she refuses. Then she can divvy up her time between all her family on her scheduled holidays, and you and your family can enjoy the holidays without all the running around. User, loud ad. My in-laws are a large family. The in-laws' spouses have large families and divorced parents. It is exhausting, especially if they're near enough where you drive everywhere and if there are multiple sets of divorced parents. My son, when young, hated the car. It wasn't fair to him either. My Bill and his wife told everyone Thanksgiving is with in-laws and Christmas was with his wife's family. If Bill's family wanted to have a Christmas, they planned it for the Saturday before or after, as an example. Sometimes they have Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving. Sometimes it's on the Friday or Saturday after, taking into account everyone's schedules. So, for example, maybe one side gets Christmas Eve, though that's problematic if you have Santa duties. You have Christmas morning at home, maybe Christmas Day dinner with another side, and Boxing Day with the third side, if not doing the Thanksgiving-Christmas alternating schedule. Personally, I think 3 versions of the holiday seems miserable, or any weekend day near Christmas. Stepmom demanding equal time just builds resentment. Attend separately for a while. It's nice not having to constantly run around everywhere. User. Physical ad, wait, what? Your wife got mad at your brother after she dragged you around to her family events and showed up late for the meal with your family? Up until this piece of information, I was feeling bad for your wife and the pressure her family puts on her. But this shows that she just doesn't care about your family, and it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to assume that she doesn't actually care about how you feel either. You should definitely look into couples therapy, because your wife is playing the victim while actively forcing a lifestyle on you that you don't want. User. Aggravating pain. The best advice my father gave me when my child was born was to start making our own family traditions and to not feel forced to travel or to keep things even. Someone has to say no, and it should be your wife. There is no need to do Thanksgiving with each family. Learn to rotate the holiday. If mom gets Memorial Day, dad gets July 4th. If someone gets Christmas one year, then other parent gets Christmas the next year. Also, what about your side of the family? When do you get to visit with them? Enjoy golfing with your wife's stepdad. I am sad he is the only rational one. NTA. Their inability to be civil with each other is on them, and not you or your wife. Invite them both. The first person who steps out of line is politely and forcefully asked to leave. They will learn. User. Snowpixium. Not shocked at all. However, if the only option open to them is to get their shit together and act like civilized human beings to one another in order to see their daughter and grandkids, then shocker. They might do that, or they might fight. And then you and your wife can tell them that they can't see you all until they learn how to be decent human beings. Also, is this the type of example you want to give your kids? That it is okay to be walked all over and be driven to exhaustion as long as you make selfish people happy? Seriously? That isn't an example I want to give kids. Edit, forgot to add you are NTA. But your wife is for letting you, the kids, and your family down. The world is more than just her dad, mom, and stepmom. She is being TA by making unanimous decision to keep the even Stevens approach. The user, Jersey 8894. NTA, I'm divorced from both my sons' fathers. Yes, they have different fathers. I told my sons as they started families to start their own traditions. When I do host something, their fathers' entire families are included because we share children and grandchildren, so to me we are all family. Now my oldest and his 5 kids in GFS have the cutest tradition. The Saturday after Christmas is our Christmas. This started due to a custody order years ago and it has just continued. The kids know on Saturday Christmases, they come to GMA's house in their PJs for GMA's Santa's presents. I know it may sound nuts, but those 5 grandkids love it. For your information, if Christmas falls on a Saturday, we schedule for after New Year's, as if Christmas is a Saturday, then New Year's is a Saturday. Last Thanksgiving, I had my 2 sons and their families, that is 11. Plus my youngest son's father and his GF and his mom and dad, plus my oldest son's half-sister and her BF. The Dills families are also included. So we had 42 people here for Thanksgiving and nobody had anything negative to say. After divorce, if you can't put it away for the kids' sake, you should be ashamed of yourselves.
Boyfriend cheats with an Uber ride, how I found out. I need thoughts on this crazy-ass story. Had this gut feeling my boyfriend was cheating. I'd never pulled up to this house unannounced before, even though I'd had a spare key of his for almost a year. This particular night we had FaceTimed and he was acting so out of character. He normally spent every Friday with me, but on this night he said he wanted to stay home and work on his music. The giveaway though was that he had his earrings in, which he never usually wears unless he's going out. I even questioned him about it during that FaceTime and he responded by saying he was taking selfies for his music. He never takes selfies or ones that I know about. Anyways, I try calling him back about 45 minutes after. No answer. Then I call again. TBH, after that first no answer I just knew. My whole body got hot. It was about 1:45 a.m. and in my head I knew I had to go find out myself. Because if I didn't I knew he would call me crazy in the morning. So I went to go and confirm it myself. My whole body was shaking on the ride over there. I kept trying to convince myself everything was okay and he had just fallen asleep. But my body knew way before my mind did. I was always over at his house and having the gate code was just super normal. So it was easy to pull into the parking lot, and with the key he gave me I opened the front door without knocking. I knew if I knocked he would have time to hide whatever it was he could be doing. I opened the door and noticed the apartment was clean. I'd never seen it that clean, and there was a stack of Uno cards on the kitchen counter and a bottle of Crown, gone. He doesn't drink. He shares this apartment with his roommate. For context. Without really paying attention to his roommate's door, I noticed his door was closed and there was music coming from his TV. I started shaking, but still hoping for the best, coping. I turn the handle to the door and in that instant I am living in my worst nightmare. My boyfriend is laying there but naked, arms around a but naked girl waist. I'd never experienced the wind getting knocked out of me until that moment. Obviously he jumps up, I scream. Semi-black out from rage and shock. My grandma had passed away a couple weeks prior and the trauma all came out. I'll save the dramatics for now but fast forward 30 seconds it hits me that this girl he was naked with is young. Not like 16-year-old young but like 17 to 20-year-old young. I know that because when I look her in her face I become fully aware that I am looking at someone close to the girls I coach who are seniors in high school. I'm just so angry at him that I don't even have the time to be mad at her. She's screaming I had no idea and saying how sorry she is because her own mom had passed recently. She said this because I kept screaming and crying about how could he do this knowing my favorite person in the whole world was gone. But here's where the night gets interesting. After about 2 minutes of throwing the girl's Victoria's Secret pink bra at my boyfriend's face I'm like where did she go? So I run to the roommate's door and it's locked. And I'm like well that's strange. Then it hits me, the roommate is also in there with someone. I become so confused because I'm friends with his girlfriend and I know that his girlfriend is out of town. So now I'm realizing both of them are cheating on us. Again I'll save the classic dramatics but I'm writing on here because the excuse my boyfriend used was that the roommate had met the two girls in Uber a couple days before and the roommate brought the girls over that night and my boyfriend said he decided to say fuck it and let her sleep over knowing I had a key and that I lived 20 minutes away. He's 30 years old and he can't confirm whether she was 21. Like he says she was but when I say how do you know he says because she was a senior in college. This was a horrible event but like I'm still so freaked out over the age of the girls. But men fuck girls all the time with the age gap. How worried should I be? He also claims that was his first time ever cheating on me in 2 years. What are the chances that I would know when he was cheating if that was true? Am I the biggest clown? He also drives Uber a lot during the week. Trial and error. Did you confirm the roomie was also cheating and tell your friend? The girl just run into the roommate's RM. Hope you broke up with the guy. Sounds like a loser. Necessary, Rich 5682. OP. Yes. My friend, the roommate's girlfriend, was on a bridesmaid trip. I called her as I was driving off. But of course she was out of the country with a time difference. What I didn't realize was that she was already catching on because her Alexa was in her living room and it notified her when her boyfriend walked in the house at 5 a.m. So fin crazy. When I snatched my boyfriend's phone during the trauma the roommate's texts were coming through in real time saying, we have to get these hoes out of here. My boyfriend of course tried to cover for the friend saying some crazy excuse that I can't even remember at this point. In between him sobbing and claiming he couldn't get hard so he didn't actually fuck her. I blocked him. Deleted him. Blocked his friends, family members, etc. I haven't texted him since the day I left his apartment which was about 3 months ago now. My mistake was falling for the roses and the cards the other day. Fuck. And yeah the girl ran in there. Which she probably did because she was freaking scared lol and her friend was in there hooking up with the roommate. God. But I guess my boyfriend's roommate was her Uber driver. So how is she going to get home? Oh my god. SMH. Second. Safe_clerk. Wife confessed to cheating. She confessed some years ago, but I have never really stopped thinking about it. Probably because he is a friend of her family and is always around on weekends and special occasions. It happened before we were married in our early 20s. My wife's mother had remarried an Armenian guy and her aunt was dating one as well. Where we live there is a small tight-knit Armenian community and they do everything together. They wanted my wife to be a part of it, not among those of us on the fringes that show up for a lot of events, but aren't Armenian or a part of their church. It was my wife's aunt's wedding. I was not invited. They said they wanted to keep it small, family only. My wife was pissed, but had no choice but to go. We met up early for brunch that day and had a few drinks. She told me that she thought she would be able to get away by 8 that evening and I could come stay at the hotel where it was being held. She told me to wait for her phone call. This was before people carried cells everywhere. When she didn't call, all the worst things ran through my head. Was she okay? I wanted to drive to the hotel, which was an hour away. The room had been rented by her aunt, so the front desk wouldn't know anything. I finally heard from her the following afternoon. I went to pick her up at the hotel. I thought we would stay and have lunch or something, but when I got there, she was standing there with a young guy, Noel. As I pulled up, he pulled her in for a hug while acknowledging me with a glance. I knew him. He was adopted by an Armenian couple as a baby. He was in his 20s by this time. My wife's aunt and mom had tried to set her up on dates with him in the past. Of course, he had been invited to the wedding. My wife immediately got in and said she just wanted to leave. So we did, and she told me she had drank too much and her aunt escorted her to her room and she just passed out. Time went by and I heard things from other people. One of my friends had been told that she gave Noel a blowjob that night. I eventually got up the nerve to bring up that night again. I didn't have to say much, she wanted to tell me. She began crying and said that she only lied because she didn't want to hurt me, but had ever since been trying to find a way to confess. Here is what I gathered from my wife and others that gave me bits and pieces from that night. My wife's aunt and mom were playing matchmaker and pushing Noel on her. I know he wanted her because he openly makes flirtatious and sometimes borderline sexual comments to her. Apparently, the shots kept flowing and my wife is a lightweight. When my wife finally collapsed to a chair, her aunt asked Noel to help her to her room. My wife started to tell me what happened, but then stopped and said that she can't remember anymore. She said he walked her up and as they got in, he began to undress her and tell her it was bedtime. At first it sounded to me like he had taken advantage of her and I wanted to confront him. But my wife asked me not to. She admitted that she was extremely drunk, but let him fuck her. She wishes it weren't true, but she wanted to fuck him in that moment. He had stayed the whole night with her. I still wonder about all the details. It's probably better I don't know, and I don't think she ever would or even could tell me. Bad Papa. OP, there is nothing more to discuss. She drank and had sex. I don't think he would have taken advantage of her, because at the time the family wanted to set him up with her. She wanted to fuck him in the moment. That could have been a drunken mistake. Find out, did she sleep with him again when she woke up? This wouldn't be a drunken mistake, but betrayal. OP, what are you asking advice on? Do you want to stay with her? This is new and raw for you and a dagger through your heart. She withheld this from you many years, and she thought about her response to your questions for years. Question for you, OP, would you still have married her if you knew what you know now? Again, do you want to stay with her? It sounds like you do. I'm sure he was invited to your wedding, with a smile on his face. You now both see him at all holidays and birthdays. It must kill you. If your wife loved you, maybe you both shouldn't go to family functions for a couple of years, so it eases your pain when AP is present. This is now eating you alive. This will be in your thought for years and years to come. I wish you the best. Stay strong. Read it here. There is so much betrayal in this world. Have you been on either side? What was your story? Leave a comment while we listen to the rest. NR3. Flaky_recognition_51. You'll be devastated and I'll just move on. A cliched saga. I've been longing to spill out this story that has weighed heavily on my shoulders for some time now. Though it's been 7 years, and despite moving on and my life being better than ever, there are times when the memories resurface. I find myself getting lost in these ReadIT cheating stories, a form of pain shopping. It's an unhealthy indulgence. I believe it springs from the fact that I've never had therapy or any form of closure on the entire situation. Perhaps, this could be my therapy or closure. So, here we go. After a 6-year relationship, my ex-girlfriend ended things. I had been suspecting infidelity for months based on minimal evidence. I never held any accusations against her, as her supposed dishonesty was only circumstantial. I sensed something was off when she would claim to be one place on nights out, but was somewhere else entirely, was overly protective of her phone, and our romance was stagnating. Amid an inconsequential disagreement, I can't even recall what it was about, I suggested we break up, hoping to gauge her true feelings. Not an ideal tactic, but all I wanted was honesty. I was shocked when her response appeared to be one of relief, agreeing that separation was best. Since we were both drunk, I proposed we go home and talk things out in depth. Initially, she had been inclined to stay out longer and enjoy herself, a response that caught me off guard considering our relationship of 6 years had just ended, yet she craved a shot of liquor. We headed home and discussed the situation all night. In that time, I tried to see if she would admit to seeing someone else, but she wouldn't budge. I began wondering if my paranoia had led me to misconstrue the dying embers of our relationship as a sign of her unfaithfulness. She made some hard-hitting comments that night. Oddly, I don't think she intended to be hurtful. Entering a new phase of my life where I was no longer the softy hippie lefty, she stated that my new job had transformed me. It was true, I had changed. Although I still possessed socialist values, I was no longer the vegetarian who immersed himself in Billy Bragg's music and hugged trees. Then, she dealt the final blow. Through her tears, she confessed, "You'll be devastated and I'll just move on." I was speechless, it was such an odd statement to make. Fast forward to our living situation post-breakup. We had only recently bought a house together and were now living in a perpetually gloomy atmosphere. It was during this time that more signs of her alleged affair with one of my closest friends, who will hereby be referred to as POS for the purpose of this story, began to appear. One Saturday, she joined a gathering of my friends. I wasn't in the mood and decided not to attend. As the clock struck midnight, I called one of our friends to ask about the evening and how she was faring. They informed me that she and POS had left together in a taxi, which wasn't unusual since he lived near us. It was convenient for her to be dropped off en route. However, after 2 hours of waiting and worrying, I finally spotted her rounding the corner and heading towards the house. She claimed to have ridden home with POS when questioned of her whereabouts, offering no explanation as to why she had been walking instead of being dropped off directly home. When I pointed out that she had left the gathering hours ago, she dismissively stated she didn't want to talk about it and went to bed. Being unable to sleep that night due to the rising suspicion, I took her phone while she was asleep, intending to go through her messages. She must have been in a light sleep despite her drunken state and woke up asking what I was doing. I locked myself in the bathroom and started looking through messages whilst she banged on the bathroom door screaming for her phone back. I felt like an abused wife hiding from a drunk husband. I went through the messages between her and POS that went back to September. Nothing incriminating, just chit-chat, often past the time I had gone to sleep. This was bizarre to me. Yes, we were in the same friend group, but they weren't close friends. She had mentioned not liking him as a person. This made sense to me, he was a real red pillar. He had a good sense of humor and was enjoyable to hang around when watching sports or on a night out, but he sounded like a bigot when it came to discussing political issues. He had transformed into a woman hater after his only ever girlfriend broke his heart years ago. This description of him seems a bit harsh. He was reliable. He had helped us a lot when we moved into our new house. He was a builder and assisted with some problems we had inherited with the house. What stood out to me was that a lot of the messages didn't make sense, as if some parts had been deleted. Ultimately, I didn't find any concrete evidence. I unlocked the door and returned her phone. She stormed into the bedroom and slammed the door. We had broken up, and I was left wondering whether she had started seeing POS before we broke up. Was this even important? Adding to the confusion, we continued sharing a bed during this time, which seems so strange in retrospect. We had a group trip to Barcelona vacation, planned in advance before everything happened. Despite everything that was going on, I decided to go along with 12 others. I was curious to see how she and POS interacted with each other. Surprisingly, I ended up having a good time and didn't see any sparks flying between them. I found myself having deep conversations with an old friend named Chelsea, not her real name, who had moved to London. We had always cared for each other, but the timing had never been right. I spent most nights at her hotel room, just laughing and joking together, nothing more. There was a significant disagreement between me and POS on the last night. He asked me to take our highly inebriated friend back to the hotel, spoiling everyone's fun. I suggested he do it if he was concerned. This led to a brawl ignited by my suspicion, although I still hadn't confronted him about it. But we decided to keep our distance, and that's how the night ended for me. Back home, Claire and her boyfriend offered me a ride from the airport, saving me from a bus and train ride. On the way, they asked how the flight was, and I admitted it was awkward but fine. Claire then casually mentioned that my ex and POS had spent the last night together, news unknown to me. Everyone assumed I knew already. This revelation set off a 6-month period of chaos, during which they insisted nothing was happening between them while trying to rebuild their reputations with our mutual friends. There were many developments during this time. My ex moved out. My mother, who had also been cheated on by my father, found my ex's car parked outside POS's house. Another woman claimed POS had hit on her throughout her relationship. My ex and I tried to plan our interactions at upcoming social events, which ended in a confrontation and a series of unfounded threats on my part. Rumors circulated about me being abusive. Apparently, they originated from POS, but luckily, my ex didn't back his story. POS and I had a heated argument, resulting in more threats from me. The police warned me about acting on my threats, stressing that it could land me in jail. Despite the trauma, the officers were sympathetic and encouraged me not to ruin my life over the issue. The entire situation led to disputes, sides being taken, and alliances forming. Some believed I was overly paranoid, while others sided with me and severed ties with POS and my ex. One friend confided in me about something he noticed at a birthday party we both attended. After I left feeling unwell due to too much to drink, he noticed EX and POS dancing inappropriately together. This occurred in October, but he decided not to share this with me earlier, fearing it might cause unnecessary tension. Eventually, the culprits confessed to Tim, whom they thought was a loyalist, not his real name, claiming their relationship began only after my breakup with them. However, it seemed to have started immediately after that. Tim was deeply regretful that he initially believed their cover-up. Given the evidence I had already provided, along with their confession after months of denial, it was clear that they had been unfaithfully involved months prior. Though the whole truth may never fully emerge, the speculation and uncertainty still brought me pain. Despite this, things gradually improved. Our group of friends stopped associating with them, they moved a little further away, and stopped frequenting our favorite bars and restaurants. The situation gradually got better, even though there were occasional gloomy days. Now, 7 years since the incident, which lasted longer than my relationship with them, I have moved on. I did end up having a long causal relationship with Chelsea and it was great. Just what we both needed at the time but wasn't meant to be. It was like long distance, best friends with benefits. I've had 2 serious relationships since then. One was a medium-term relationship that ended, but now I am in a fantastic long-term relationship with a woman I adore. I live with her, envisioning her as my future wife. What about EX and AP, you ask? Well, since all ties with them have been severed, I only hear about them once in a blue moon. According to what I've heard, they're doing amazingly well. They're still together and now even have a baby, one happy family. Good for them, right? I was hoping that karma would catch up with them, but it seems like I shouldn't bank on that. I guess it doesn't really exist. That being said, the incident occasionally crosses my mind, drawing me back into the darkness. I hope sharing this will help me find closure. So here is a tip: don't cheat and don't betray friends. NR4. Looking for guidance 25. Cheating on both sides. Infidelity. I want to start off by saying this is a throwaway account. Backstory: I am in the military and went away for 5.5 months. During that time I downloaded Tinder and Bumble because before I left my wife and I were on bad terms. We were in couples counseling and it wasn't working. I had Tinder and Bumble for a few months and talked to women on it, but never actually met up with them. It's sad, but I honestly just wanted to feel wanted by someone who wasn't always angry and controlling. Fast forward to April. I delete both of those apps because I decided I wanted to try with my wife again. I stopped talking to all of those women on text and just ghosted them. My wife came to visit me for almost a month and it was rocky, but good. By the end of it she suspected something and went into my phone while I was sleeping and found messages and pictures from other women. She confronts me about it and I tell her the truth once she gives the names, knowing she has gone through my phone. She winds up texting a few of the women from her phone and asking if I had ever met up with any of them. They all say no, and all say they didn't even know I was married. 2 girls even called her apologizing for even talking to me. Before she leaves we come to an agreement that after my last month away, when it's time to return home, that I would and we would begin to rebuild and work on our marriage. We argued here and there and I started getting a gut feeling, I guess. So I ask her if there was anything she is hiding, and if so, come clean, because mind you I didn't have to go back home, I had an opportunity to go to another state for work. We agreed that the only reason I was coming home was to try and fix what had been broken by me. She said she really wanted me to come home and that she had nothing to hide. Fast forward again to the week I get home. I have a feeling something's off still, so I ask again and once again she says no. A few more days pass and I can't shake the feeling, so once again I ask, and after hours of her lying to me the truth comes out, she had downloaded Tinder and that was it. I say okay, is that everything? After a few more hours it comes out that she had Hinge and just those 2. Same thing continues, she said she never gave any of the guys her number. Truth comes out again that she did give her number. I gave it a few days and felt something still because she kept lying and more information kept coming out. So a few days pass and I bring it up again. She said she went on 2 dates and that one of the dudes tried to kiss her and she denied his advances. Also comes out later that she spent 3 hours at a dude's house all while I was gone. She initially said nothing happened and I knew it was a lie. Some time passed that night and I told her I wanted the truth and she begged me to stay if she told me the truth. She told me she sucked his dick but they didn't have sex. I asked for their names and numbers so I could text them like she did the girls in my phone. She kept refusing and refusing, causing me to believe she had more to hide. She said why do they need to get involved, they didn't know. I brought up the girls that she texted in Florida and she said that it was different. Meaning there's definitely more to the story she's not telling. She says she did all of this as retaliation and revenge for my betrayal, but the difference is I never slept with anyone else or even met up with anyone else. Yes, I acknowledge my infidelity, but she is playing the victim and steadily blaming me for what she did. When I gave her multiple opportunities to come clean, I flew back to the other side of the country under the impression that she had done nothing and I was coming back to work on our marriage. Am I the dick? Did I deserve this? If so, then it is what it is.
Sorry about the peanut shells on the floor. These minions are slobs.
Wasted a larger amount of money because of mental health, so I attribute making this mistake to the worsening and more long-term effects of my anxiety. I had to make a decision on a school and chose the much more expensive and slightly more reputable one, at first based on prestige, cause I thought that's how you get ahead in life. My dad, who I have a conflicting relationship with, would pay for it, put down a $2,500 deposit to secure the place. But I just couldn't deal with having him pay $20K for a media and film studies masters, even from a very good school, because they're just so manipulative with money. So at the last minute, I chose the slightly less well-ranked one so I could do a work-study program. We're not getting that $25K back. I know it's a super privilege problem, but it's not really about the schools. I'm worried my anxiety is going to become so overwhelming at more and more important and pivotal points in my life, and I won't always be able to afford or change my wrong decisions. I just freeze and can't think for myself. I'm so terrified I'm not part of this reality enough to understand it and therefore have good judgment. I feel I react and feel in such an alien way to everyone else. I'm just usually quite good at masking it. I don't feel at home in this world at all. User, fancy leftovers. I can relate. Entering adulthood is really scary, especially if you're like me and didn't have to grow up fast because you have a stable or sheltered upbringing. Stable doesn't mean perfect or even good. When I was transitioning to young adulthood, I also felt that everyone else around me knew what to do, knew what was going on, and just overall had some secret or some trait that I simply lacked. Because of that, I basically gave up right away. I refused college, got a wage job that I slacked at, and started smoking pot and drinking. It was like I knew I was going to do everything wrong anyways, so I may as well just do everything wrong on my own. I feared succeeding at anything because the more responsibilities the user, Atsy Smith. Dude, thanks. For the last 2 years of high school, I was doing a school-based electrical apprenticeship where I went to school 3 days a week and worked 2 days. I'm not sure about other countries, but it's a cool program we have in Australia for young people interested in trades to get a head start on their apprenticeship time. 4 years total. I would also do work blocks where my school would send me to work for 2 weeks to a month straight, like 3 times a year on top of the 2 days a week, every other week. Anyway, right up until the end of school, this was working well for me. I was still going to graduate high school, was making more money than other kids my age, and thought I had a sweet career as an electrician set up for myself. This went downhill when I finished school and went full-time. I worked for a year doing 40-60-hour weeks, and though I could feel my mental and physical health deteriorating, I just kept working tirelessly because of some weird need to prove myself as a man or something. I saw my company workers, who were only in their 20s themselves, seeming to thrive in their job, while I was struggling to cope with waking up at 4 a.m., sometimes as early as 3:08 a.m., depending on where I was working that day. Then getting home and being so sore and tired that I would just drink and smoke weed until I passed out and do it all over again the next day. I turned 19 over my Christmas break, and after the first 3 days of work this year, I had a huge mental breakdown while getting the fellas some lunch from down the road and haven't even gone to work since. It's been 6 months and all I've really done every day is play video games and smoke weed and get drunk at night. I feel so ashamed since I used to have this feeling of pride about having a job and working so hard when so many of my friends were just unemployed, partying and sleeping around. And now that pride is gone. Anyway, I won't spill my guts anymore since I know it's not a very interesting story. But your comment at least gives me a little hope that I'll be back to my fit and employed self soon enough. Haha. User. Smartbid. Oh, my friend, just know you are not alone in that feeling. In no way do I have the ability to give advice I will not judge, but I do have the ability to empathize with you for sure. Some days it's getting through. Love yourself fiercely, and if someone did something so egregious, well, I think it's okay to stop beating yourself up for not being able to forgive them. User. Give me awards. Your struggle is real, and anxiety can cloud our judgment, making decisions seem like climbing Mount Everest. It's tough when the mind plays tricks on you, but remember, you're not alone in this. Seeking support from a therapist could help you navigate these murky waters. Life's a crazy roller coaster, but you've got this. Stay resilient and remember, it's okay to ask for help when the road gets rough. User. Several sorbet. 7007 sorbet and 17. It sounds like anxiety made a school decision tough, but you were smart to listen to yourself. The money is a bummer, but focus on the good choice you made for your future and your strength in recognizing anxiety. Talking to someone about anxiety and focusing on the positive steps you've already taken can help you feel more in control. You're not alone, and there are people who care about you, user. Confident Robin, I definitely relate. It sounds like there are some possible self-esteem issues. Is therapy an option for you, or medication? I took meds for anxiety for a few years, and it helped tremendously. I've recently come off the anxiety meds, but still take the mood stabilizers, antidepressants, and ADHD meds. User. Pac-Man, you're not alone, my friend. The world needs you, and you're valuable. Growing up wealthy can be fun, but also it can be a mental health minefield. My sister is a judge, and Dad has a big business, and I just wasn't into money and prestige, and it's been hard to live in a family that are obsessed with success. I feel your pain and thinking of you. There's plenty of time left to change course. That's a positive, if there is one. Read it. So when we have now the means to see that a lot of users struggle with mental health and money, what is your story? Can you relate to this one with your own stories or got any advice for the original poster? As you watch this movie, I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on the story being told. Beyond the visuals and the dialogue, there lies a deeper narrative, a journey that invites us to explore, feel, and connect. The essence of storytelling movies are more than just entertainment. They are a powerful medium of storytelling. They transport us to different worlds, introduce us to diverse characters, and present us with complex emotions and ideas. As you watch, immerse yourself in the narrative. Consider the themes, the character arcs, and the underlying messages. What is the story trying to convey? How do the characters' journeys reflect our own experiences and struggles? The power of reflection, reflecting on a movie, allows us to engage with it on a deeper level. Instead of passively consuming the content, we actively participate in the storytelling process. Think about the scenes that resonate with you, the lines that stay with you, and the moments that evoke strong emotions. Why do these elements stand out? What personal experiences or beliefs do they connect with? The lessons we learn movies often hold valuable life lessons. They can teach us about resilience, love, sacrifice, and the human condition. As you watch, consider what lessons the story offers. How can these lessons apply to your own life? For example, a character's perseverance through adversity might inspire you to tackle your own challenges with renewed determination. Beyond the screen, the impact of a movie extends beyond its runtime. It can influence our thoughts, feelings, and actions long after the credits roll. Reflect on how the movie affects you. Does it change your perspective on certain issues? Does it inspire you to act or think differently? The true power of storytelling lies in its ability to transform us, a call to reflect. So, as you watch the rest of this movie, take your time to reflect on the story. Let it sink in, let it challenge you, and let it inspire you. Consider the creative effort behind the film and the messages it aims to convey. Embrace the journey of reflection, and you might find that the story has more to offer than you initially realized. In conclusion, movies are a rich tapestry of narratives waiting to be unraveled. By reflecting on the story, we deepen our appreciation and understanding of the film. We connect with the characters and themes on a more profound level, enriching our own lives in the process. So sit back, watch, and reflect. Let the story guide you on a journey of discovery and introspection.
Welcome back. How's it going out there? You got this. it's okay. We all hit some bumps. You got this. You're way ahead.
Women of Reddit, what was something you didn't know about men till you got with one? KPI. Morningwood. Had absolutely no idea that shit just pops up every night till I started dating my first boyfriend. Snoo Confections. That when they need to go to the store, they just go straight to that item and then pay and leave. It's something I need to learn, LOL. Classy how rarely they get complimented. I told my guy that I loved his shirt and he didn't even know what to say. He told me he couldn't remember the last time someone complimented him, so I've started looking for little random things to compliment him on. Drakmanka. Years ago I bought my stepdad a Star Wars themed t-shirt and he started getting compliments and comments on it a lot, and it instantly became his favorite shirt. Recently, my mom told me he was wanting another nerdy shirt, so I worked with her in secret to get him the right size of one I knew he'd like, and she sent me pictures of him opening it. I shared a house with that guy for 6 years, but I'd never seen such a smile on his face like the one in those pictures. Gonna have to find another for him someday, since they do seem to earn him a lot of compliments. Viking that the ball sack physically moves around and you can see when it gets looser or tightens. It's super fascinating to look at. You can also feel it, and the man can't control it. Edit. It happens based on temperature. Edit 2. I think we should all just agree to call this the lava lamp effect. Tommy boy. My ex-wife was shocked at how short a phone conversation can be for dudes. My best friend called me once. This man literally flew across the country once to be at our wedding. Called me because he was bringing me to work the next day. Still need a ride? Yep. Okay. I'll be there at 530. Sounds good. And that was it. She sat there astonished and was asking, why didn't we want to talk to each other? I really had no good answers either. It's just the way she goes, I guess. Jessica says, how different a penis can look soft vs erect, and how much it can shrink in the cold. Dyrado, that balls don't typically hang at the same level. One is a little lower than the other. All those dick doodles have lied to me. Professional how much trauma they tend to accept as simple facts of life. Definitely made me more invested in my brothers. If my husband has experienced X, Y, and Z and has thought nothing should be done or even said about it, how many experiences like that have the other men in my life had? Theater Ranger. I've had that before. Don't know that anyone told me to supper ourselves stuff, but once the obvious steps have been taken, traumatic stuff just gets compartmentalized. I was molested as a very young child, and after berating some folks at the camp where it happened, it just wasn't something we talked about because what was to say? Most of my family had a similar experience in some other context during their lives. I thought it was a regrettable but not uncommon thing. Didn't cross my mind that this is a big deal till I was in my 20s. Chams Greyjoy. How rarely men are given compliments about their appearance, and how even something as simple as, "Oh, you look handsome today," or a colleague saying, "I like your tie," can make a man's entire day. I had a boyfriend who was positively beaming when he came home and told me how one of his colleagues complimented his shirt and tie, which he rarely wore. And he went on to step up his work attire because someone finally noticed. He told me no one had ever said that to him outside of his mother. And I realized how little men are complimented on dressing well or looking put together. It made me so sad because women are always hyping each other up, but men don't seem to do that. It doesn't mean men don't want or need compliments. Everyone does. But they seem to so rarely get them. Maladaptive Lucifer. One of my friends gave another friend a love tap on the balls and he threw up. I've been kicked in the clit with the pointy part of a shoe and it really hurt. I was at school and wearing basketball shorts, so I got to feel the whole impact. But this dude straight up changed colors in the face. and repeatedly heaved even after the initial vomiting. It seems like it probably hurts a lot. I'm glad I don't have balls, and for clarification, I've discovered that a love tap generally seems to mean punching someone in the balls as far as my male friends are concerned. There's nothing lovey or tappy about it. Rebel. I genuinely thought men held their penis when they peed because otherwise it would fly all around with the force of urine going through it. Mule over. How much some love to hold hands or be physical with hugs and such. Grew up in a bad environment, and many of the male figures in my life were always cold or distant or flat out abusive. Trying to figure out a way to handle it as my body nervous system isn't used to that at all. Deleted user how freakishly strong they are. My husband was a normal looking dude. Didn't go to the gym, but he literally lifted a treadmill into the back of an SUV by himself. Ginger banger. How easy they can be to please. A plate of food without being asked or a compliment, show of admiration in front of other people, goes quite a long way. Moxymoron, they love compliments and will hold on to them for years. I noticed this with my husband a while back. Whenever I tell him that something he wears makes him look nice, he'll wear it as often as possible. If he tries something on while shopping that I think looks good on him, he'll buy it and put it on as soon as we get home. I love that guy. Mr. Pooney, my friend said she was amazed at how men can make anything fun in a collaborative project. Throwing rocks in the lake? How far can you throw? How many skips? Biggest splash? Or digging a hole at the beach? Every man will join in and make a hole halfway to China. Bryce a dude. That's the beauty to being a man. One time I was driving 4 hours to my mom's town. I noticed someone started following me. I drive a little fast, and after a while I realized he was just my cruising buddy. When I got to my exit, I looked back as I stuck my hand out the window to wave goodbye, and he was already waving at me as he was passing. Made a friend without even seeing him up close. No good kitty cat. Yes. When my husband and I were first messing around, I thought he only had one. Later found the second. Made me realize they kind of migrate around a bit. Cool. Anatomy is weird, was my whole thought about it. Didn't think about it much outside of that. Cut to like 16 years later. Just like maybe a year ago, he runs in the bedroom, pulls down his pants and shows me my balls are gone. I laughed and told him he'd be fine. He was dead serious about his nuts being gone. XD about an hour later, I told him to check his nuts. Lo and behold, they were back. I told him that I noticed they do that, but it took him 40 years to discover this about his balls. I could not stop laughing, dancing, glumming. That they are really emotional, love a cuddle, and want thoughtful consideration just as much as women. I know this sounds ridiculous, but I was raised with men who didn't show their emotions or have strong opinions. The first time I got a proper boyfriend, I was amazed to find he loved being held. B. One conversation I had repeatedly with my girlfriend after I had been out for the day night with my friends, her, how is everyone? Me, they're all good, her, a news? Me, no. Not really her, nothing at all. You just spent 10 hours together. Me, well, yes, but don't know her then. What the hell do you guys talk about all day? Brain-eating Galian. Penises float. The first time I took a bath and a guy joined me, I giggled uncontrollably while poking at it to push it down so it would pop back up. Edit, apparently not all of them do. Clearly, my data set is quite small compared to the population of penis shavers who exist. I have no idea if it's related to size, but I am a mom to 2 boys, and when they were little enough for me to bathe, floating definitely happened. D. Then apparently, according to the weather forecast I heard on the radio this morning, a powerful cold front is approaching our land.
Subscribe and like if you did. Now let's just watch my poor gameplay equal to...
What's the most surprising thing you've ever uncovered about someone you're close to? Golden Coal. Discovered my colleague faked his own death in his country, if origin due to debt. Sold us all a load of emotionally charged bullshit about tragedies in his family, only for us to find numerous news articles detailing how he left them with mountains of debt, then died abroad. B. Zero Bone One. I found out the friend of a friend of mine won the lottery some years ago, like one of the multi-state ones, 9 figures, all that. I got to hang out at his manse a few times. It was gigantic, like 12K square feet, indoor pool, full bar, elevator, the works. Every time I went over, even if it was just for an afternoon football game with the guys, he always had these insanely beautiful women about half our age hanging out in a bikini or whatever. They looked like the girls you'd see on Instagram wearing designer dresses and hanging out on yachts. I found out after our mutual friend drunkenly told me one day. He said he won in the low 9 figures, but he claimed he had since invested it and now has even more. Human magic marker my Phil served in Vietnam, but never talked about it. It wasn't until just recently he started opening up about the horrific things he saw. The dude has not slept a full night's sleep in over 40 years, but now that he's finally getting help, he's doing a lot better. But the shit he had to deal with over there, man. And then the welcome they got from their own country when they came home. It's no wonder so many of them committed suicide and have serious PTSD, all migraines. When my husband died in his sleep, the coroner decided to do an autopsy to find out why. The results were that my husband had not kicked his pill-popping habit like I'd thought. It was a large cause as to why he passed. Then, at his viewing before the funeral, the one woman he worked that I had an issue with showed up. She crumpled to the ground on the way to his casket, crying and telling me how sorry she was, but that he was just so good looking. So, yeah, on top of becoming a young widow, I also had a lot to unpack about the life he led outside of our home and marriage. Deleted user. My grandmother was a mean woman. When she got dementia, it took us forever to get people to understand that the sweet version was the dementi, her. And the mean one was what she was like all her life previo, usly. That's kind of important to know for later. The story was that my grandpa was a mean drunk, that he beat up my grandmother and abused my dad when he was a toddler. My grandmother tried to divorce him, but couldn't get the divorce without losing her family's home, which she'd inherited before they were married. The story she told everyone was that my great-uncle, her brother, found him at a dead-end road with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And then that was that. He was out of the picture. She never talked to us about him. I never saw a picture of him, not hing. I didn't even know what his first name was until after she died. Going through her things, we found a Bible with their marriage date, tons of pictures of them as a couple, and some with my dad as a baby. She even kept their marriage certificate. I thought it was weird because the only thing ever said about him was that he was a mean and awful our son. I found out other stuff about him from my great uncle. When she died, I thought it was really weird she kept all that tough, especially since she only spoke about him being such a terrible our son. I did one of those DNA tests. It popped up that I had an uncle and an aunt on my dad's side. Grandpa had been married before, but he had kids with 2 different women. So then I got curious and started going through the family tree and looking for birth, wedding, death announcements in old newspapers online. I found an article about my grandfather's death. He didn't die at the end of a street. He died from a gunshot wound in the house my grandmother and him lived. I did a Google Street search of the address. All the houses on the street are older 1900s to 1920 style houses that have been kept up over the years. Except where my grandma's house was supposed to be was just an empty vacant lot. There was nothing there but grass, which was really weird because the street is really rather nice with nice homes. So then I did a newspaper search of the address. She called in the suicide the night it happened. Police came and said they'd be back in the morning because it was late. They took off the body but didn't do a full investigation due to the time. Then the next morning, the house caught fire and it burnt to the everyone in the town and at her job was scared of her. And now I think I know why. She had such a bad reputation that when my parents announced they were getting married, people tried to persuade my mother and my other grandpa not to let them get married because my grandma was such an awful person. I think it's because they all knew she killed my grandpa, but nobody could prove it. A man showed up at her funeral that I never met before. He walked up to me and shook my hand and said, "I used to work with your grandpa. He was a really nice guy. It's a shame they never found out who killed him." When I say my jaw hit the floor, I was dumbfounded. First, because WTF, who says that? And second, that's not what I'd always been told. My husband called me over to him for a second, and then, when I turned back around to talk to the guy again, he was gone. I even went looking outside because I was like, I need answers, damn it. Have no clue who he was, but he pretty much just solidified what I'd though, but didn't know for sure till then. She literally got away with murder. Darcy Mackenzie. I'm not sure this exactly fits, but close to. My parents found out in their early 30 seconds that they were distant cousins. They only found out because my great-grandfather was doing genealogical research. Turns out that both sides of the family lived in a small rural town some generations back with some intermarriage. My maternal grandmothers independently, i.e. they didn't know each other at the time as far as I know, ended up married and raising kids in another small town an hour away. One in the country and one in the city. My parents met in the one high school and went to the prom together, but lost touch. They met up again in university and got married. Because of the way the original intermarriages worked, my sister and I are actually cousins with my parents too. I can locate myself twice on the family tree my maternal grandmother made. Desdemoninahat. My cousin C originally found me very annoying. I was 6 years younger and a girl, so that certainly didn't help. But as we grew older, we became very close. He struggled a lot in his 20s, but had really turned around, was married with 2 stepchildren, and a baby on the way. I was exceptionally proud of him. And then one day, a few years ago, my mother texted me letting me know C had been arrested for molesting his 8-year-old stepdaughter. Eventually, it came out that he'd been molesting little girls since he was 11 to 12 years old, and that his first victim was his then 5-year-old sister. His bio dad and stepmother were aware and swept it under the rug. He took a plea deal and will get out of prison in about a year or so. I'm currently pregnant with my first child, who he will never know about, assuming my aunt maintains her promise to never speak with him again. And I'm secure in the knowledge that if he ever so much as utters my child's name, I'll rip his throat out with my fucking teeth. User Sparky. My wife and I have been married 24 years. She never showed much interest in music or listening to the radio. A few years back, she started showing signs of Alzheimer's. In July, I placed her in a care home. For the previous few months, I'd be listening to classic rock while I cooked supper. Occasionally, I'd ask if she knew who was playing. Sometimes she'd get it right, other times she wouldn't. About 2 weeks before I put her into the care home, we were playing Name That Tune, and she was hitting every single one, even naming the band. Then Janis Joplin came on. She said, "Oh, yeah, I know that one." She was singing that at Woodstock when I caught my boyfriend cheating on me and started walking back to the car. A few songs go by, and another one. "Yeah, I heard that at Woodstock too." She had never mentioned being at Woodstock in the 24 years we'd been together. Curious, I asked her about it. She said she had run away from home at 14 because of abuse from her father. I already knew that part of her life. While living in California with her boyfriend and another couple, they drove cross-country to Woodstock. She told me the song she heard and what she was doing at the time. From the time when she says they got there after dark the first day until the sun came up on the third day. Every song she mentioned was confirmed by multiple playlists online. It just blows me away that she had been at Woodstock and never once mentioned it the entire time we were together until then. I believe she had repressed the memories due to the abuse she had been through, and the Alzheimer's somehow unlocked that part of her brain and let the memories out. User Calexia. I used to have a really cool coworker. He was fun to hang out with, always quick to laugh or help out or offer a word of support. Dude's awesome. I knew he had a crazy past and had been in jail before. No big deal. He eventually told me he has a murder charge dropped on his rap sheet that still occasionally gives him trouble with the police because it always makes them suspicious. One night, he and a group of friends went out partying. At one place, they came across another group and got into a verbal confrontation, but eventually they went their separate ways. Later, at another place, the other group happened to also be there, and at some point, someone from the other group snuck up and clubbed him on the back of the head, immediately knocking him out and leaving him in a pool of blood on the floor. In the ensuing brawl, someone from his friend group stabbed and killed someone from the other group, leading to everyone involved getting a murder charge. His was dropped because he was obviously unconscious the whole time, which everyone admitted to. All he remembered was talking one moment and the next waking up in a hospital bed with his mom crying and telling him he almost died. A bit of a shock when, as far as I know, the rest of his criminal record is just for graffiti. User Manic Maker Studios. Not someone I was close to, but I found out my grandmother got pregnant with my mother when she was 15. My grandfather was in his late teens, early 22nd. Back then, when you got someone pregnant, you were expected to marry them and provide for them. So that's what my grandfather did. Proud husband to a 15-year-old pregnant bride. In a small town. Must have been awful. What was worse is that my grandfather resented being trapped into that arrangement and made sure to punish his family for not recognizing just how much he did for them. He was the kind of guy who went to work where everyone had to kiss his ass if they wanted a paycheck, and then he would come home and sit in his recliner in front of his TV and get angry if everyone wasn't, showing him proper respect as a provider. His wife, his children, and then the grandchildren he had to raise after he ruined his own children were all just parasites to him. He earned the money, we just spend it. My grandmother died when she was 49. She developed an eating disorder long before I was born, and if it weren't for the calories she got from beer every day, she would have died of undernutrition in her 30 seconds. It starts when you fuck and make the baby before you're an adult to care for it, and it goes downhill from there. My grandmother was a miserable cunt, and I hated her my whole life until I found out about how her adult life started. She was still a cunt, but I was at least able to develop a bit of empathy and compassion for her. She deserved better than the asshole she got stuck with. Nameless Ghoul 661. So, about 5 months after my grandmother's passing, my cousin kept getting a call from this lady that was asking about her mom, my grandmother, and she said that my grandmother was her mother. Not sure how everything really came together, but it turned out that she was actually my mom and aunt's half-sister. My grandmother always talked about the godly side of her life, wait till marriage and stuff, but never mentioned about having a daughter before my mom and aunt. Respectfully, I understand the amount of stress she would have been in from my grandfather, but it had turned out she was with a guy in college and had a kid, but ended up giving her up for adoption after my great-grandfather had forced her to since she was 16 at the time. And seeing the pictures of her first daughter are scarily similar to my grandmother, and it's like looking at a picture of her. Haven't met her yet, despite it's been 2 years, but she's been wanting to hear stories from everyone. And it sucks not meeting your actual mom and finding out years later that she's passed away. And I'm sure my family has told her about her mom, but one day I'll eventually meet her and tell her everything, even show her pictures. And for context, I was close to my great-grandfather and my grandmother before they passed away. So this is my surprising or shocking thing I discovered from someone I was really close to. User, backs and alcohol. My dad hid a drug addiction from me and my siblings for a long time. I remember getting some pain pills after I had a tooth removed, and suddenly they were all gone. Only person in the house was him, and everything came out after that. I was maybe 11. User, backs and alcohol. My dad hid a drug addiction from me and my siblings for a long time. I remember getting some pain pills after I had a tooth removed, and suddenly they were all gone. Only person in the house was him, and everything came out after that. I was maybe 11. User. Standidal, a relative, mentioned he has killed someone once. He was drunk and very tearful and kind of blurted it out. He was very, very regretful. He was older than me, the same age as my parents. I knew he was a former member of an infamous Irish terrorist group and knew he had done some crazy stuff in the name of fundraising for the cause, but didn't know about that. Some of the older relatives did know, I think, because they were around during his active service career. Anyway, it was very sad. My family, all being emotionally crippled Irish, never spoke of it afterwards. User. Estrogen. My mom once shrieked, "I hope you don't get molested like I was," because I asked her to drop me off extra early for my middle school's choir concert. That's how I found out my mom got felt up by one of her parents' friends when she was a teen. It was the 60s, so my grandmother successfully talked my grandfather down from absolutely murdering the man. Good job, Grandma, letting that douchebag get away with touching your kid. I hope everyone was happy with that decision. Gotta keep that status quo. User. My mom once shrieked, "I hope you don't get molested like I was," because I asked her to drop me off extra early for my middle school's choir concert. That's how I found out my mom got felt up by one of her parents' friends when she was a teen. It was the 60s, so my grandmother successfully talked my grandfather down from absolutely murdering the man. Good job, Grandma, letting that douchebag get away with touching your kid. I hope everyone was happy with that decision. Gotta keep that status quo. User. Brub1. I found out the friend of a friend of mine won the lottery some years ago, like one of the multi-state ones, 9 figures, all that. I got to hang out at his manse a few times. It was gigantic, like 12K square feet, indoor pool, full bar, elevator, the works. Every time I went over, even if it was just for an afternoon football game with the guys, He always had these insanely beautiful women about half our age hanging out in a bikini or whatever. They looked like the girls you'd see on Instagram wearing designer dresses and hanging out on yachts. I found out after our mutual friend drunkenly told me one day. He said he won in the low 9 figures, but he claimed he had since invested it and now has even more. User, this is my clean user. My father's mother, whom died before I was born, was my grandfather's mistress. When my aunts tried to get each of their marriage licenses, they discovered their last name was different than their parents'. Turns out they were both products of a long-term affair. My grandmother was 15 years younger than my grandfather, and they had left the state after the oldest daughters were born. Abandoning his wife and daughters, they changed the spelling of his last name and married in my home state under the new name. Both grandparents died before I was born, so I found out from one of my aunts. My mom and my sister are the only members of the family to meet my grandfather's first family after he tried to reconcile with them before he passed. My father hates the family crest I have at my home, which shows the spelling of our last name before his father changed it. He hated it so much he researched our ancestors and found that our current spelling is the original spelling from our ancestor that came to the States in the 1700s. User, Darcy Mackenzie. I'm not sure this exactly fits, but close to. My parents found out in their early 30 seconds that they were distant cousins. They only found out because my great-grandfather was doing genealogical research. Turns out that both sides of the family lived in a small rural town some generations back with some intermarriage. My maternal grandmothers independently, i.e. they didn't know each other at the time as far as I know, ended up married and raising kids in another small town an hour away, one in the country and one in the city. My parents met in the one high school and went to the prom together but lost touch. They met up again in university and got married. Because of the way the original intermarriages worked, my sister and I are actually cousins with my parents too. I can locate myself twice on the family tree my maternal grandmother made. A man married for over 8 years got cheated on. Don't miss out on the story and all Redditors' comments. Wife of 8 years cheated on me. Me, 26 minutes. 26 minutes and my wife. My wife. The Fahrenheits have been together for 8 years, and married for 5. I recently lost my job due to illness, and my wife, stay-at-home wife for all that time. She recently got a job a month ago, and I have already found text messages between her and her manager saying they've been kissing and how much they like and just want to be around each other all the time. I confronted her about it, and she says nothing is going on, that she doesn't want him in that way, but I am having a hard time believing anything she is saying. She says, I'm the one that's doing too much, but I don't know anymore. Can anyone give me some good advice about what I should do or how I should go about it? Do women usually leave when their husband is going through a tough time? JJ Botcore, do not continue with her. I repeat, do not continue with her. If you are sure about what you saw in those messages, then you have to move on. Your ex doesn't love you. If she really loved you, she wouldn't be fooling around with another man, bruh. Get her life together and move on, as difficult as it might seem. I bet her gonna find another wife. But RN, get or shut together and have fun with the world. Do some activities you usually don't do. Get out of that box and see how beautiful life is. Those feelings that you say, and I quote, aren't going to fade away. She doesn't even deserve that. Love is about trust, and if you can't trust for obvious reasons, then my friend or heart is in the wrong place. I suggest you block her and try to communicate with her with a family member that supports you, since you too had kids. Blocking people who damages our mental health is correct. Now, try to be a good dad with you or kids and go meet some new PPL and adventures. PRB, bottom line, she probably slept with him. And if she did, you don't take her back. I would report the relationship to her HR dept, and they will both likely get fired. That may not end the affair, but you can bet it's still happening now. Tell her if she can prove they never had any sexual contact at all, you will give her another chance. When she asks how she could do, they tell her you will schedule her for a polygraph. If she passes, great. If not, you divorce her and send copies of the results to her family. See if she is willing to put up or shut up. Mango Saint Juice, she said it's just a kiss? Nope, do not accept that bullshit, LOL. You need to separate from her for a while. Either ask her leave or go stay at a friend or a relative. Or at least stop sleeping on the same bed as her. Whether you divorce her or try to work it out, you have to stop treating her the same as before you found out. That way she can truly understand that she fucked up. I'm telling you, if you act the same, or if you go along with whatever BS she comes up, or give in to her demands to rug sweep the situation, or worse, do the pick-me dance, she's going to continue and take the affair farther. Cultured gentleman. If you want solid evidence, then apologize to her and leave it alone for a week, and then take out a loan or get a new credit card and use it to hire a person whose job it is to gather information on cheating spouses, if you know what I mean. Even if you're in a no-fault state, it could affect spousal support payments. If not, then prepare for more gaslighting and paranoia until she gets sloppy, hopefully, or just straight up tells you she's leaving you. Thank your mouth to God's ears. Yeah. She was opportunistic, and you did fulfill that need she had, but hooking up that fast with the manager of her new job? She was hunting as soon as she hit the job market. And let's be real, adults don't kiss behind the bleachers and leave it at that. Any kiss between adults, even more so when one is married, is establishing the foundation for sex as soon as possible. They didn't hold hands first or pass notes. Oftentimes that first kiss in while getting the clothes off for the first fuck. She's trying to leave you and lying to you about what you found. She has almost no respect for you and does not fear you at all. Either she doesn't care if you leave or is confident she can walk all over for you. Either way, she'll never respect you enough to be faithful. If you take her back, she will know she can do it again. Women don't respect men who give them a second chance, and women don't stay with someone they don't respect. Danik, my heart breaks for you, but consider yourself luck this didn't hit you at 42 after years of marriage and leave you paying her over the next 20 years. Small thing to call silver lining when you have so many heartfelt memories and thought this was the rest of your life. But clearly she's not a good person, at least not right now. This was going to happen at some point because of who she is. You're getting off that ride early and can go find the one who the rest of your life. Still shitty to go through. You'll be better, but have to go through some suck to get there. Mango Saint Juice, she said, is just a kiss? Nope, do not accept that bullshit, LOL. You need to separate from her for a while. Either ask her leave, or go stay at a friend or a relative. Or at least stop sleeping on the same bed as her. Whether you divorce her or try to work it out, you have to stop treating her the same as before you found out. That way she can truly understand that she fucked up. I'm telling you, if you act the same, or if you go along with whatever BS she comes up, or give in to her demands to rug sweep the situation, or worse, do the pick-me dance, she's going to continue and take the affair farther. Cultured gentleman, if you want solid evidence, then apologize to her and leave it alone for a week, and then take out a loan or get a new credit card and use it to hire a person whose job it is to gather information on cheating spouses, if you know what I mean. Even if you're in a no-fault state, it could affect spousal support payments. If not, then prepare for more gaslighting and paranoia until she gets sloppy, hopefully, or just straight up tells you she's leaving you. Thank your mouth to God's ears, yeah. She was opportunistic, and you did fulfill that need she had, but hooking up that fast with the manager of her new job? She was hunting as soon as she hit the job market. And let's be real, adults don't kiss behind the bleachers and leave it at that. Any kiss between adults, even more so when one is married, is establishing the foundation for sex as soon as possible. They didn't hold hands first or pass notes. Oftentimes that first kiss in while getting the clothes off for the first fuck. She's trying to leave you and lying to you about what you found. She has almost no respect for you and does not fear you at all. Either she doesn't care if you leave or is confident she can walk all over for you. Either way, she'll never respect you enough to be faithful. If you take her back, she will know she can do it again. Women don't respect men who give them a second chance. And women don't stay with someone they don't respect. Danik, my heart breaks for you, but consider yourself luck this didn't hit you at 42 after years of marriage and leave you paying her over the next 20 years. Small thing to call silver lining when you have so many heartfelt memories and thought this was the rest of your life, but clearly she's not a good person. At least not right now. This was going to happen at some point because of who she is. You're getting off that ride early and can go find the one who the rest of your life. Still shitty to go through. You'll be better, but have to go through some suck to get there. F-Smerts, you cannot unlock it. The moderators lock it as each sub has its own set of operating policies and scope. That's why I suggest posting in the infidelity sub, because at this point your situation seems to fit. Is that just an excuse? 100% trying to shift blame to you for her cheating. This is known as blame shifting in the cheater's handbook. That's also not being remorseful. If her trust was broken 2 years ago, then she should have resolved that with you during counseling. And if that didn't work, then she should have pursued divorce. If she's been behaving like a loving spouse during this time, until her caper with lover boy, while harboring these deep resentments, then she's never been wholly honest with you, let alone happy. In this light, her recent proclamations of love to this lad should be taken at face value, seriously, and her threatening self-damage should be viewed as a component of a mental health collapse. Make sure she gets psychiatric care, and then you'll have other decisions to make. Smirts. You are welcome. To this moment she has extreme regret. I think you need to be able to discern in her behavior whether she is feeling regret or remorse. The rules here prohibit posting links, but you should research the difference between the two. Regret has to do with wishing you hadn't taken a particular action. In her case, it's the consequences, both to your relationship, but I would think she regrets how she is now perceived by the school and community. If anyone saw them kissing, they would not interrupt, and they would gossip. Just her being up there with him is enough to wag tongues plenty. Remorse involves admitting one's own mistakes and taking responsibility for one's actions. It very much seems like she is holding your past gambling problems as that which pushed her to behaving badly. That's not remorse, it's justifying cheating. If she's focused on her own pain rather than yours, it's not remorse. That's feeling sorry you were caught. That's feeling rotten because her fantasy love life with the young man has been busted after only some kissing. You both have a lot of work ahead of you. James. Hey, up. Sorry about you, what's happening? There's no such thing as a kiss between adults being innocent. If your wife is concerned about preservation of marriage, she needs to quit immediately. And you need to contact the owner of the business and let them know what's happening between your wife and manager. Also, what's the story with the manager? Does he have OBs? If so, contact OBs and let them know. You need to control the narrative here. Let members of both sides of the family know what's going on. Do not let her gaslight you. Well, I'm not sure exactly what you want to do here, but under no circumstances you move from residence. You'll ask her either to leave or sleep in a separate room. If you're planning to reconcile, you'll need to set boundaries she must adhere to. Her phone and locations must be open and on. Absolutely North Carolina with the AP, and she needs to let you know where is going and where. I wish you luck, brother, and take care. Deleted user. Okay, let's not do that bullshit. Women and men and others leave when times get hard, so let's not sit there and make like it's just women. As well as, would you like me to tell you a possible reason she is? Because you all were children when you got together, and she knows no one but you as well as she doesn't know what it is to be single and an adult. You all need to get a divorce. Know your worth, you read what you read and you saw what you saw. She's a coward, and instead of her not disrespecting you and just asking you for a divorce, she rather cheat and be even more disgusting. Do not stay, there is no working it out. Pack your stuff and go back and live with your parents or with friends or family till you can get on your feet. You will never be able to trust her, so why waste your and her time, energy, and life? Odessa good one she coupled with you when she was a child. You are most likely the only man she's known. You get sick, and she is thrown into a completely different scenario than what she has had for all of her adult life. She literally doesn't know how to be around men who aren't you or family. That and the physical health of your relationship is on her. Now, this is likely her first real job. She is not going to be perfect at adult socialization straight into the workplace from the kitchen. The fact that you're snooping the moment when she is not at your beck and call is telling. Listen, being sick and losing your job is life-changing. It is easy to fall down the rabbit hole of self-pity and jealousy. Resist that temptation. Take this time to deepen your relationship with your wife. Talk to her like she is a strong, loving woman who has stepped up. That deserves some respect and conversation, not accusation. The bros in this forum, usually teens, would have you believe that you should punish her. If you do that, the only punishment that will be experienced will be when she drops you off at the SSI office and drops divorce papers on your lap. Fake it, young man, because compared to me, that's what you are as a woman who has been in a relationship for 26 years. Let me assure you that you didn't lose a thing. Right now it feels that way. Right now it feels like you want to cry and get angry and fight all of the above. However, give yourself a little bit of time to heal, especially since you are dealing with health issues. At the age you were too young to be married, maybe 50, 60 years ago, yes. But in today's society, no. I don't recommend for any young man to get married before he's 35, and a woman should be. at least 27 to 2008. Only then are we done with all the B. Only then, until we realize how precious the person standing in front of us is. Unfortunately, we find out too late most of the time. I want to congratulate you and have the balls to leave and stick to it. That takes a lot, especially when you do have children. You are nobody's doormat. No matter what she was going through, she should have broken up with you first. When I used to tell my husband women are evil, he never understood until now, decades later, when he has seen people we know do some shady S. With that in mind, you are going to be fine. She is going to have trouble finding someone. A man always wants you when you're married and knows that you're going to go home to somebody so he doesn't have a headache. Trust and believe me, that man doesn't want her now that you're gone. Just make sure you don't want her back and don't ever forget it. Forgiveness is one thing, that's for you. Forgetting is another. She can forget about you forgetting. Looking forward to the update on your new wedding in the next 10 years? Good luck, young man. Sincerely, an old woman deleted user. First of all, let me say that both of you are extremely young, and that definitely plays a part in this and her behavior. You guys married very young, especially for this generation. I'm thinking there might be a religious reason involved, but I'm not sure. Anyway, do not stand for this. Do not let her gaslight you like that. You need to sit down and have a serious conversation with her and tell her to tell you the truth, or you'll get up and walk away. She is clearly not telling you everything you need to know. A happy wife doesn't just kiss strangers after being married for 3 years without there being a serious problem in the relationship for her. Maybe she has lost excitement with you and is seeking it out elsewhere. In fact, that seems blatantly obvious. I don't want to give you false hope, but maybe you can rekindle something. But honestly, dude, I was cheated on brutally by my now ex-GF of 2 years in February. And let me tell you, by the time something like this has happened, it's already too late. Smiley, what she did was unforgivable, but at the same time, I don't know what to say. From 15 to till now, the only person she has been with is you, and whatever she had experienced was only with you. There's an age for everything, whether it's about first crush, one-sided love, and the first guy to be with. You had been there all along, but you shouldn't have get married this early when you haven't experienced anything yet. There's more to life than love and sex. You should have been patient and let each other experience life has to offer as lovers, not married partners. You mentioned you have 2 kids as well. Gosh, you both are still kinda in a newly bloomed phase. Why do you had to take the risk getting pregnant, have kids this early? Life wasn't going anywhere. You both could have taken your time to know each other more in a mature level. Now those 2 might have to suffer without a reason. You have been her whole all along, and you had been the breadwinner since you both got the baby, so I guess. She doesn't know the real outside world. It's very new and unfamiliar for her. And now you are sick and can't work, so she has no choice but step up for you and the kids. She got the job, but the AP is one of those fuckers who take advantage of the weaks, or he might not. We don't. If it was a fair or the predator found the prey, she might have resisted first, but as he carried on, she felt something new that she have never felt before. She might have never been courted before by other men, and now when someone is doing it makes her feels excited, and eventually it happened. They kissed, just what you know, and also she admitted to only accused allegations. We don't know if they had done more. The tiger has tasted the blood, so it might hunt. She might do it openly or stealthily, no one knows. She might stop herself for the sake of your family, but I doubt, especially when looking at how inexperienced she is because you got married early. What she did was wrong, and I condemn her for it. You both are young, and you might try to make things work from now on. However, first have a serious talk with her and get a confession of the real truth. If she still denies, then you might better be alone than being with her. Besides, she clearly don't feel any guilt or remorse. Therefore, she didn't took your confrontation seriously and just feign ignorance like it was just a kiss. Chill. She clearly doesn't respect you or your feelings. Cheaters will always be cheaters no matter what you do and how miserable you make them feel. Regardless of having kids and a husband, she did an unforgivable thing while not feeling an ounce of guilt. Confront her again and make her spill the truth. And regardless of the outcome, I would recommend you to split up, unless she's ready to work through and make amends. Think about your kids and yourself, and ask yourself, can you work through? Do not miss out. Like and subscribe. Or don't. What's the most surprising thing you've ever uncovered about someone you're close to? User, Xoze. My wife's gay brother and I were enjoying a nice evening in the desert recently, while on one of our typical family vacations. I love this dude and enjoy spending time with him, talking about life in the middle of the night while looking up at the stars. User, Miss Bankakesister found out my great-grandfather had 5 children on an island he was stationed on during World War I, left them and their mother behind, moved back home to his island of birth, and started a new family. Never heard his daughter from his second family, my grandmother, ever mention the other family until we met a lovely couple from that island, and she told us all that she had 5 siblings from there. And even then it took my grandpa, not my grandma, to tell me the full story of how my great-grandfather abandoned the mother of his children and his children after the war was over. And I still don't have any names or other details of these great aunts and uncles. We're discussing the state of AI and where we see the technology going. And he casually mentions that he got a girl pregnant and she just had his son. Apparently he's known this woman for some time now, and she asked him to help her get pregnant. She had a lawyer draw up the contract, made sure they were both protected, and that he was under no obligation to support her or the child. He's showing me pictures of the baby. I'm thinking his mom is going to freak the fuck out, and I asked how he felt about the entire situation. He said, "Well, I just thought someone should be using it. I decided there was no need to go deeper than that." User, your Pop-Tart Sarah Rady. Similar story in my family. My great-grandfather must have had his first family when he was a very young man. After my great-grandmother died, we found hidden photos of my young great-GF with a young woman and 3 kids who looked just like him, clearly posed as a family. My great-grandparents married in their mid-20s, and those kids looked to be 4-8 years old, so we're guessing he knocked someone up as a teenager and had a shotgun wedding. Then maybe just left when it became too much. We have no info about the other family, so, like you, we'll never know about anything about them. User, Beginny. It was found that my father's $25,000 Rolex was stolen by my sister no more than a day after his passing. They were constantly broke and pleading with my parents for money, so I didn't find out until after she and her husband made an extravagant purchase. She might have stolen and sold the Rolex, I realized as I grew suspicious. I obtained the necessary documentation, traced the sales history, and found that my sister's pawn shop located just down the street from where the item was sold. Went to the pawn shop and, with some convincing, got them to tell me that my sister had sold it to them. My mom and I rejected her. User, Boy Inowell did some family digging a few years ago. Found out my family name stops at my great-grandpa, who hated his family, cut them all off, made up a last name, and moved on. When I say made up a last name, it's basically a dumped-out Scrabble bag with an Eastern European twist. Answer for above. From User, Team Great Gramps, reading the paper, boy falls in well, boy in well? And it could be worse. See the Dutch hating Napoleon and being forced to take last names and not taking it seriously at all. Gekkehaves. Hi, bosom. Paardebeck. Horse's mouth. Rotmanson. Rotten people. Pupjes. Feces or farts. Farts nakgeboren. Born naked Zeldenthuis. Hardly at home Klutwig. Village of balls Uwittenbroek. Out of his pants. Wee cruier. Onion crier. Van de Straat. From the street, my grandpa, while in the U.S. Army, recognized some people from his town in Iowa, and they were ignoring him, preventing him from handing out their paychecks while they were speaking Dutch to each other. Having grown up in a bilingual house, Dutch-English, he called out their last names, but translated to get their attention and embarrass them for wasting his time. User, Golden Cole discovered my colleague faked his own death in his country of origin due to debt, sold us all a load of emotionally charged bullshit about tragedies in his family, only for us to find numerous news articles detailing how he left them with mountains of debt, then died abroad. User, Reporter Aromatic, not me, but I found out my best friend's boyfriend was a former child molester. She sent her daughter off to live with her dad and stayed with the molester. Ick. User, Clicia. A close family friend's dad was a child molester. I went away on weekend trips with them and had sleepovers at their house. I remember holding hands with him at the roller rink because I was unsteady on skates. Then I found out he had molested his own kids and other minor relatives. It was shocking. Alcosaurus. My aunt had a baby as a teenager in the 70s. She was sent to a camp for the summer to have the baby and give it up for adoption. She was told if anyone found out, the family's reputation would be ruined. My grandfather would lose his job, etc. The whole family was sworn to secrecy. We, grandkids, including aunt's legitimate children, only found out it had ever happened when she approached my aunt as her bio mother in her 40s. We were all introduced to our long-lost cousin, who pretty quickly went no contact due to how batshit nuts our family actually is. Deleted user. My sister was married to my brother-in-law for as long as I can remember. She's 15 years older than me. He was a Chinese man from an affluent family, aerospace engineer, super nice and funny guy. Our family absolutely loved him. A few years ago, he and my sister partied at their friend's house for his birthday and stayed the night. She went to bed early. In the morning, she had to go to his truck to get something, and it was covered in cocaine residue, and he had thousands of dollars in cash just sitting in the glove box. Turns out that he had been a drug dealer. They had people watching their house at one point. He had drugs shoved in boxes under their stairs and in his underwear drawer. He had started using drugs and got messy. He also had been banging escorts and was having an affair with one of his old friends who lived around the corner and using their daughter's old phone to hide it. I was in shock when I found this out because he was the person you would least expect it from. User. A clone is a clone. My father was raised very, very Catholic. They lived in this town that was built by the Catholic Church. He went to the Catholic school. A priest he was close to eventually. Well, it came out he was a pedophile. He got convicted. My dad says he never was abused, but the way he has lived his life says otherwise. And then my dad, unprompted, starts talking about how repressed memories are fake. He does this often, usually after mentioning the priest thing. Also, his mother was quite insane and disowned my dad and her older son when they left the Catholic Church. Instead of getting rid of the older brother's things, she built a wall around them inside her house. Okay, my dad did not see her again from the age, if I think 16 or so, till he went to her funeral several years later. She would not see him or speak to him because he was left the church. User, purgatory heart. My dad and his siblings also all grew up super Catholic. My uncle, my dad's oldest brother, had to go to Sunday school as you did back then. He returned one day stating he would never go again. When my grandma asked why he wouldn't tell, my grandparents pressed him and he told them, the priest sawed him. My grandma beat him with a coat hanger for lying. They never spoke about it again, but my uncle also never went back to church. I just found out recently, almost 10 years after he died. He's always been someone I looked up to, and I feel so bad for him. But I guess that's where I got my hatred for the Catholic Church from. User, damn it Maxwell. My sister recently revealed that our grandfather sexually abused her frequently when she was a young child. I was only the second person she ever told. The first was her husband, and there hadn't been a third. Our grandfather died more than 10 years prior to her telling me this. So there's nothing to do with the information but comfort her and reassure her that I believed her. There's literally no reason to lie about it. The man is dead, and she absolutely isn't the kind of person to want any attention at all. The worst part, obviously, is the sexual assault. But the second worst part is that people have told me my entire life how much I look like my grandfather and have the same mannerisms, etc. I always took it as the compliment it was meant to be. Now I think about the fact that I physically resemble my sister's abuser. User, in Anna's pocket. My incredibly mild-mannered grandpa did some seriously badass stuff during and after World War II. He'd originally been a chaplain, but was recruited to be a forward observer, which meant being dropped out of a helicopter behind enemy lines with skis and a reconnaissance mission. He ended up being directly involved in the liberation of at least 2 concentration camps, and after the war, served as a translator for war crimes prosecutions. He was fluent in French, German, and conversant in Italian and Russian. He didn't talk much about it. Once he sat down the grandkids and had a conversation about the horrors of the Holocaust, but not with many details. Only after he died I found out the extent of his involvement through some interviews published after his death. I know what he saw haunted him, and the interviews I read after his death, he also struggled with his role as an interpreter, particularly with women being prosecuted. They weren't guards, but there were women on the Nazi side who were involved. But I do think he did a lot of good, both in the war and throughout his life in so many other ways. He was a teacher, then principal, then superintendent in a small town. And at his funeral, basically the entire town showed up to share stories of his unrelenting compassion, kindness, and commitment to just treatment for all. User, something else. One of my childhood friends also worked as a mechanic at the same motorcycle shop that I did. One day some guy came in for a service, and the service writer guy was shocked at how much he looked like my buddy. A while later, we find out my buddy's dad had a secret family with 3 other kids. Both families were being cheated on by dad at the same time, so the combined 6 kids were about the same ages. User, something else. One of my childhood friends also worked as a mechanic at the same motorcycle shop that I did. One day some guy came in for a service, and the service writer guy was shocked at how much he looked like my buddy. A while later, we find out my buddy's dad had a secret family with 3 other kids. Both families were being cheated on by dad at the same time, so the combined 6 kids were about the same ages. Deleted user. Stepping on a friend's bondage gear as he desperately threw clothes over it, hoping I didn't see what I stepped on. I had to pretend not to see him panic. Beyond a lovely WTF moment. Honestly, the only way I'm going to be surprised by my friend is he or she is into something weird, and then they panic as I stumble across it, or finding out I already knew but didn't say anything. Maybe that's more amusing than surprising. My friends are mostly chill and just regular dudes and dudettes. User, Alexis Danan. Well, by close to, I mean related to. Found out my eldest sibling, F, is apparently a sexual predator. We have been no contact for over a decade now for unrelated reasons. It recently came to light that she allegedly sexually abused her autistic stepson. He is no longer in her care now, but he was for the majority of his life, since he was about 9 to his early 22nd. I knew she was a toxic, manipulative, overall mean person, but to say I was stunned would be a massive understatement. Please note that I use alleged and apparently, as this matter is still before the courts, and innocent until proven guilty. User, Maleficentured. I found out years into knowing my best friend that she cheated on her husband shortly before becoming pregnant. Her husband wanted a paternity test, but the baby looked just like him, so he didn't push it. They are a strong couple now. Also, she used cocaine in her early 20s before she got married. She's very conservative now, so I wasn't expecting either revelation. User, Larapu. My aunt was adopted, and it was an unusual adoption, as babies were generally placed geographically a minimum distance away from the birth parents. For whatever reason, she wasn't. We always thought that perhaps it was a family member that got a girl in trouble, and my grandparents stepped up and agreed to raise her. When my grandma passed after my grandpa, and still no truth bomb about it, my aunt got curious. She found her birth mother due to some medical issues she was having and wanted to get records or history for her doctors. Her birth mother then revealed that she was 15 when she got pregnant by the father of the family she babysat for. He was 20 years older. Both he and his wife came to the hospital to see her, so his wife knew about the baby and who the father was. This man was a pillar of the community, and if my aunt shared this news with his children, grandchildren, it would be devastating to them. We know this family. I went to school with his grandkids. There is so much to include, so there will be a continues of this topic in the near future. Like and subscribe if you would like more content.
I think you can win this thing.
Our first daughter was raped at 14 and we raised the baby as our own child. Our first daughter committed suicide and we carried on raising the baby. My grandchild thinks we're her parents and I can't bring myself to tell her the truth even now. This is a lengthy confession. I'm sorry if you don't like reading long posts, you can skip to the end if you want. Our first daughter was raped when she was 14. It destroyed her childhood and flipped our lives upside down. You always assume if you bring your child up right and take care of them nothing bad will happen, but something bad just happened anyway and there was nothing we could do afterwards to make what happened right. The man who did it got sent to jail eventually, but our daughter was never the same again. Counseling never brought her smile back, nothing seemed to work. She seemed so cold and emotionally dead from there onward and we tried so hard to connect back with her but nobody could. She was an island and didn't want to talk to anyone about anything. We as parents blamed ourselves for this. We ended up pulling our daughter out of school to homeschool her because her attendance was very bad and she suffered night terrors which kept her awake some nights. It was probably a bad decision and overprotective parenting, but we wanted to protect her and felt a regular school wasn't a safe environment for her at the time. As if the situation could be any worse, we found out our daughter was pregnant with the rapist's child. We tried to suggest an abortion because of her age and the situation, but she didn't want to. Our daughter refused to abort the pregnancy, so we kept her out of school to give birth to the baby. We raised the child as our second daughter to give our first daughter the life she was robbed. We just wanted her to enjoy her life and told her we'd raise the baby for her as her sibling and she agreed to this. It was partly out of fear of what the neighborhood would think, and partly out of wanting our daughter to continue having a normal teenage life. It wasn't ideal, but things worked for a time and our daughter got to see her daughter whenever she wanted, which was better than giving the baby up to adoption. Things didn't last this way for long though, as our daughter's mental health started to deteriorate. When our first daughter started to become heavily suicidal. There was nothing we could do because every time we tried to get closer to her she'd push us away worse than before. She was hospitalized several times for suicide attempts until she succeeded in committing suicide. This destroyed us. At first we hated the baby and blamed it. We blamed it for the death of our daughter and were in denial it was our fault. Eventually though we realized we were to blame, not the child who was brought into the world by no fault of their own. We'd focused for so long on the fact it was half of the rapist's child, that we'd overlooked the fact it was also half of our daughter. It took a lot of time to come to this conclusion, but we'd always looked after the baby out of respect to our daughter. The thought of giving it up to adoption went through my mind several times, but I knew my daughter didn't want this and so did my wife. We gave our daughter the best life we could. We bought her anything she could ever want, took her to concerts and on holidays. We even sent her to a private school despite the extra expense with hopes that she will become successful in life and live the life our daughter never got to live. She is home right now and whenever she hugs me or my wife and says, "I love you Mom/Dad," it hurts like a dagger through our hearts. I always look towards my wife every time our daughter says it. She finds it as painful as I do and I can tell by the look in her eyes. It's not that we don't love her, it's that her entire life is being lived believing a lie. We're actually her grandparents and she has no idea of this. She's never asked if we're really her true parents because obviously she has never had a reason to. Part of me though believes lying by omission is still lying though. We've never told her the truth about her sister being her mother. She knows her sister committed suicide, but she is too young to remember her. I feel as though we're protecting her from being damaged and hurt by keeping her oblivious to all of this. Maybe I'm just being selfish, maybe my wife is too. We just don't want to see her suffer. The thought of her not being strong enough to hear the truth scares me the most. I know I shouldn't compare her to my other daughter, but I would never forgive myself if she committed suicide too after learning the truth. I cannot lose both of them, I can't survive another loss like this. The whole situation is soul-crushing. The only person I can talk to is my wife. It feels like some massive thing nobody else can ever know. Not even our parents know the truth. ReadIT, what would you have done in the same situation? A penny for your thoughts in the comments. Now to the Reddit side of view. Purple Pigeon 1672. I have a very similar experience. Before I left for college, my mom came to me with tears in her eyes and said we needed to talk. She told me that when she was 16 she had a baby, and because of her age and religion, her family decided it would be best if the child grew up thinking she was another sister in the family. My mom was crying by the time she said my aunt was actually my half-sister. She thought I was gonna be mad or something. I told her that it didn't matter at all and gave her a big hug. It's funny now because every now and then I have to remind myself she is my sister, and when I call her sis we both smile and chuckle. Break that fast. This happened to a good friend of mine. He was living with his sister and cousin off and on when they came to the States. He was told both his parents were dead. They broke it to him when he was 21-ish. The sister was his biological mother and the cousin was his biological half-sister. This apparently happened a lot several decades ago when kids were had out of wedlock. Bobby Darin had this happen where his grandmother raised him as his mother and his thought-to-be sister was actually his mother. Atom Bomb Babby. My ex-boyfriend's father was raised by his grandparents believing that his mother was his sister because she had gotten pregnant and wasn't fit enough to be able to care for him. They waited until he was older and at a more stable place in life to tell him, and he was shocked and hurt at first, but he grew to accept it and he continued to love his grandparents as his parents because they were the ones that loved him and raised him. I would say wait until she is older, but telling her when you know she will understand is a better option. She loves you, and that won't change. Atom Bomb Babby. My ex-boyfriend's father was raised by his grandparents believing that his mother was his sister because she had gotten pregnant and wasn't fit enough to be able to care for him. They waited until he was older and at a more stable place in life to tell him, and he was shocked and hurt at first, but he grew to accept it and he continued to love his grandparents as his parents because they were the ones that loved him and raised him. I would say wait until she is older, but telling her when you know she will understand is a better option. She loves you, and that won't change. Chelsmoto. I would seek therapy for you and your wife, not just for guilt, but also to figure out what to do. In the day and age of at-home DNA kits, this secret won't stay secret forever. I've heard so many stories of families finding out secrets similar to this because of test results, or someone catching on to something. This can't stay secret forever. I definitely think it best that it comes from you, guided by a professional, versus her finding out a different way. Edit, spelling. Edit 2. For those that keep pointing out that her grandparents have the same DNA, I'm fully aware. The problem that could arise with the at-home DNA test, think 23andMe, and tests of the like, is that anyone from her bio dad's family that has taken the test will show up in her DNA network online. Which would raise questions for as to why she is related to those people. Eder var. You write all this with a tone of self-guilt, and I understand your worries, but the most important thing I get from the facts of your story is that you and your wife are outstandingly good people. Your daughter got raped and you did everything you could for years, and you are also trying your best with your second daughter. Whatever the outcome, I think that at some point the basic work you have to do will be about yourselves, giving you the credit, the love and the self-pride that you obviously deserve. You cannot care for others all the time if there is no self-care at some point. Sour Seshabialta. What you may not have yet accepted is that the person you raised, loved and sent to private school is your daughter. Each time she tells you she loves you, it shouldn't feel like a dagger. It is her way of telling you that you are amazing parents. You have experienced a tremendous amount of pain while sparing her of this same pain. I'm not sure what one could hope by telling someone they are not their parents, they are the product of a rape and that their mother committed suicide. This is your decision and you might benefit from seeing a therapist who specializes in trauma to ensure you have professional advice and support. You are good parents. You are raising a healthy, thriving daughter. She is lucky to have you. Take comfort in this fact and that your first daughter left behind such a wonderful contribution to the world and someone who makes you smile each day. Later 7. I really am so sorry this happened to you. So very sorry. You are doing your best and your daughter did her best too after the horrific event she went through. You and your wife are very good parents by sheet evidence of your loss. Your granddaughter is truly your special daughter. There is no rush on telling news. She isn't emotionally ready or you would be writing a different letter no doubt. When you all felt empty you looked outwards to make your granddaughter and daughter got the help they needed. I cannot imagine how she would have felt. But she is at peace now. I'd say she'd be delighted to see how you raised her baby. She is your daughter's little girl and you continue to do what's right for your daughter and family. She wanted to keep her baby it seems and you honored her wishes to ease her trauma and pain. Even though you all must have been overwhelmed with confusion and a conflicted mind. Amazing grandparents. She loves you and guilt is a pretty useless emotion in this case. You feel heartache but guilt for raising a lovely young woman is misplaced. Your daughter loved you both too and her little girl. In the face of evil you did good. And everything will happen in its own time. What amazing parents to both girls. Don't feel guilty for worrying about neighbors. No doubt this was your holding on to a semblance of normality in the face of trauma. You have raised a child who says, I love you, in spite of all the sorrow you went through she feels love. Why? Because she has had it poured into her by you, your wife and by your daughter may she rest in peace. You did your utmost with what you could and you still do. Be easy on yourselves and imagine this little girl loves you as parents. That's just how good a grandfather and grandmother you both are. Bless you. Chozal. This actually brought tears to my eyes for so many reasons. All I can say is it's extremely brave for you to endure all this pain in order for another human being to not suffer. As someone who has endured so much suffering in life and has suicidal thoughts, it would be so nice if someone was able to take on the pain and the suffering I've had due to my experiences. Albeit a lot of my suffering came from parental neglect and you have done the opposite. With DNA tests available now, my fear is that she will eventually find out, but I hope that even if that was true she would someday understand the insurmountable suffering this situation has caused you both and obviously your daughter that has passed. I don't know how old this child is now, but I can only imagine her finding the right coping mechanisms and gain a better understanding of your decisions in her 30s. I believe in my heart you have made the right, most selfless decision. An unbelievable burden to bear and the most sacrificial. I am in awe of your strength and I know the pain, and the easier thing to do would be to tell her everything. It would make your burden so much lighter and would help you both so much not to live in this lie. This would be the selfish thing to do because yes, she would suffer for so many reasons now, finding out so late that she was product of rape, that her mother killed herself because of how she was conceived. I can only again resonate in the fact that if it was me and I was that child, that is the most kindness thing you can do for her is to bear this burden. And it brings me so many tears to know that people like you exist and would sacrifice themselves to make someone's life easier. From someone who has never experienced sacrificial love from my parents, this is what love does look like, and you obviously love her very much. Catbed Paradise. OP, it sounds like you've had no help with your grief. It's awful to lose a child at all, and your pain is compounded 1,000,000 times by the violence that was done to her and your feelings of helplessness to relieve her pain. Also, it seems that you've taken some of your deceased daughter's false self-blame for getting raped. That was BS for her and BS for you. Please get grief counseling, at the very least, so the very real love in your family is not tainted by so much misplaced guilt and shame. You're doing an incredible thing for your second daughter. Telling her about your first daughter can come in time. But first, please get some help with your overwhelming grief. Snarkophilus. I'm so sorry to hear of your loss and your pain. A few things to think about, though. First, when you say you've never had the nerve to tell her, would telling her actually be the right thing to do? Would it help her in any way? Or would it just cause her a lot of needless anxiety and heartache? How would knowing this help her? Maybe someday, after she's an adult, there might come a time, but as a kid, something like this wouldn't help her at all, and personally I'd say you're doing the right thing by not telling her. It's an adult kind of problem, and she's not an adult. Don't burden her with it, and don't feel guilty for not telling her. Secondly, you and your wife aren't treating her as if she's your daughter, she is your daughter, in every way that matters. She's basically an adopted child. People adopt children all the time, usually ones that don't have any biological connection to them, unlike this girl. Adopted parents are real parents. And adopted children are real children. For your own sake and your child's, please, do your best to put the tragic past behind you and just be happy and grateful that you have this loving, happy child to call your own. Many people aren't so lucky. Just treat her as loving parents do, and you'll be doing all of you a great kindness. Rocky Dale. You, your daughter and your grandchild have gone through hell. Your story has moved me more than most on Reddit. To tell a child, no matter what age, 8 or 28, that he is the product of rape is not a good thing. Lying to your child/grandchild isn't good either, but you must consider what is best for them. If I were your child/grandchild, I'd rather not know. It would feel as if I were the reason for my mum's suicide, and the guilt I would then carry for the rest of my life could be unbearable. It sounds selfish, and I'm sorry for your loss, but speaking brutally, something good has come from the very nasty situation. You have a beautiful child. They will never replace the loss of your daughter. You can never undo the horrific act that happened to your daughter. But you can, and from the way you have described the situation, still care for the child and bring him/her up in a safe environment and love them. If I was in their situation, I'd rather never know the real truth, and live a life of life, and be happy. I don't see how telling the vile truth will ever end happily. Cone 1230. I want to start off by saying you and your wife are selfless, beautiful souls. This story is truly heartbreaking, for many reasons. You did right by your daughter, you too did everything in your power to make her okay again. I know it's easier said than done, but you should never blame yourself for what happened, and I hope you know wonderful you are. You and your wife did what was best, at the time, given the situation. If I can offer any advice, it would be to tell your second daughter with the help of a trusted and professional therapist. You want to do this the right way, if there is such a thing. Talk about your story. You may be able to help others who are facing similar heartbreak. I wish my parents were as selfless and wonderful as the two of you. Telling her will change your lives completely, but make no mistake, your lives don't have to change in a negative way. This process will take time, dedication and love, all of which, I can see you already have. I say that with confidence. I hope coming out to Reddit has helped you. Good luck, my friend. Samuel 2:14. When she graduates college you can think of talking to her about it. Let her get on her own adult feet. She isn't living a lie. She is your daughter even if she is also your granddaughter. Genetics don't matter except for in health and genealogy. It may be partly your fault for the path. But the result is unforeseen. Support your daughter the best you can and one day, you should tell her. But she needs to understand that you weren't protecting her. You were blind as to what damage it could do to a young mind. It shouldn't hurt like a dagger eventually. You have only lived for her life. You are a good person and don't fret. Things sound surprisingly great. Please don't forget that dwelling in the past is very unhealthy, that you are living for your first daughter. Doing exactly what she would have wanted for her daughter. It isn't selfish to not tell her, and you need to know that you have time. Just pay attention. Keep her sharp and know how to take care of herself. The only thing you can regret is not honoring your family. Which I would be surprised if you managed to do. Mainly, because you have done anything and everything a parent would do in this matter. You are one of the strongest individuals I have ever heard of. Please 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 remember you are her rock. You are Dad. I would have given anything for a father like you. Even if he was my grandpa. Just be there, okay? Don't let pain creep into your heart when she says she lives you. Because she would regardless if you were Dad or not. You'd love her the same. It's going to be okay. D3 Spirato 13. This is very similar to my story, but without the sad circumstances. My heart really goes out to you guys as I can only imagine how difficult this is. It's a real catch-22 situation as to whether you tell her or not now or wait till she's older. I spent the first 13 years of my life believing that my biological grandparents were my parents and that my biological mother was my sister. It was an unbelievable shock to find out the truth, and I started suffering from bad panic attacks, which I'm really only getting to grips with over the past few years. It's a huge thing for a person to find out, especially a kid who is in the middle of puberty and likely already dealing with a lot. Nothing really changed for me once I found out in terms of how I interact with my family. I still treat my grandparents as my parents and my mother as my sister, and that's how the outside world views it as well. It's just one of those things that nobody really brings up unless I mention it because none of them want to hurt me. I'm lucky that I've been able to open up about it in therapy over the last few years, and I also have an unbelievable wife who's been a real rock and a great listener. I even contacted my biological dad a few years ago, which I never thought I'd end up doing until I actually started exploring my feelings fully. If I had to give anyone advice, I would say either tell the kid from a very early age or else wait until they pass the most difficult teenage years. In my view, that's the best for their mental well-being. That being said, if you think there is a reasonable likelihood of her finding out elsewhere, e.g. extended family or friends, ever needing a copy of her birth cert etc., then it is better to just go ahead and tell her rather than let her find out accidentally. If you do tell her, make sure you're completely open and frank about everything. It'll be incredibly difficult for you and your wife, but don't blame yourselves or anything like that. Don't dwell on the rape or your daughter's suicide, those are issues for discussion after the initial shock has worn off. Answer any questions she has as openly and honestly as you can. My dad didn't want to tell me and was very abrupt with answers when I had questions in those first few weeks after I found out. I really picked up on this and just stopped asking questions and started bottling up things instead. I've found out since that he wasn't doing this on purpose but was incredibly guilty about how he acted when I was born and had tried to convince everyone that I should be adopted. There is a lot of resentment in my family about this and other issues that I also picked up on. My mom overruled him and drove to the foster home where I was to bring me home in defiance of her husband's wishes. I don't hold it against him at all though. He's been a great dad. It was just a different time, thanks a bunch Catholic Ireland, and is one of the biggest regrets of his life. Best of luck whatever you decide to do, and don't worry about things changing. She's your daughter and you're her parents. Bond always overrides biology in my book, and anyone I ever talked to that this happened to as well. Wrote a storm. Just a few thoughts/ideas from a random internet stranger whose heart is breaking for your family. Maybe call a rape counselor. They have dealt with every aspect of rape and the destruction it causes. They can probably help you and your wife decide what's best for your family. And since I am a person who believes everyone can benefit from therapy, it might not be a bad idea to help you all deal with your justified hurt and anger. Does the biological male prisoner know they produced a child? Family medical information is so important if anything ever came up. I have to say she would probably want to know, and I say this over two different perspectives. One was a friend who proudly said, "Hell yes, I am adopted. My parents picked me with all my baggage, they picked me." My heart always melted when he said that. The other example is my cousin, who may very well be my cousin and my uncle. My grandfather raped all of his children. He is over 40 now, and no one would tell him who his father ever was. All his siblings know who their father is, and he wonders if that's why he was grandpa's favorite. Or was he just pitted because no one loved him enough to be his father? Etc. etc. The list goes on and destroys him a little more each year. Now everyone has passed and he can't get any answers. The never knowing the truth is hurting him more than knowing. He already accepted he was probably born out of rape in his 20s and just needs to know as he gets older. Josh. You guys are amazing people for choosing to adopt and raise your daughter. You're not lying to her, you are her parents, you are her dad. Just because you're also her grandfather doesn't mean any part of your current arrangement is a lie. It's extremely unlikely that anybody here has the experience to weigh in on your situation with any legitimate insight, so take everything that I say with a huge grain of salt. It probably makes sense to tell her at some point in her life. That's a conversation to be had between you, your wife, and likely a licensed, trusted third party who is trained in this area. But that has absolutely no bearing on the real situation that exists, today, in this moment, between this girl and the only parents she has in this life to love and care for you. She calls you dad because you're her dad. Accept that, own it, love it. Read it. This post got so much love from the community, incredibly. Hope it all has worked out. The end. Leave a comment what you think about the situation.